The Army Painter is my favorite hobby company in the entire world. My desk is literally full of Army Painter products, and it takes me from being an average painter to putting above tabletop standard models out into the tournament scene. Not only that, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive play than any other hobby company in the industry. They allow us to keep doing the things that we do. If you enjoy the Army Painter as much as I do, head over to thearmypainter.com where you can use the discount code ARTOWAR5 to get a discount on your next order.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another exciting Tier List Tuesday!
Woo woo! Tier lists. Love tier lists.
The Nurglings have been purged from the circuits. We are back to rank every faction in Warhammer 40,000. So, we're pretty excited about it.
Absolutely. I think this meta is really good, honestly. I think the rules are very solid. I think it's just a good game right now. A lot of armies are competitive. We've been seeing a lot of results being put up by all kinds of things.
Yeah, most armies have put together event wins at this point in Pariah Nexus. I think there's only 2 that have not gotten an event win yet.
Yes.
And that's pretty impressive, honestly. I quite like where the meta's at. So we're going to be ranking everything here in the Pariah Nexus meta. Of course, we've already done this, but now we've got a much better picture of what the game actually looks like. And so I'm excited to run it back.
Absolutely. We are going to update our tier list for Pariah Nexus. We had one that came out right as Pariah Nexus came out. So it was kind of a speculative tier list. And we're here to, either mea culpa or bask in our glory as we get it right or wrong.
I don't think we've ever put out an inaccurate tier list, so I think we should be good here.
Yeah, we're solid.
Absolutely. Solid. So, as always, if you are new to the channel, make sure that you like the video, share with your friends, subscribe especially. That'll get you notified every time we go live. All these little click buttons, all it does is it really helps us grow the channel, and it helps us make more content like this for all of you. We do go live several times a week, so make sure that you subscribe to the channel to get notified every time we do it.
Absolutely. And we will reiterate this as the stream goes on, but we're actually going to cover all Super Chats at the end. Unfortunately, covering Super Chats live, that's what did it. That's what wrecked the audio, so I hope you guys are proud of yourself. And we're going to learn from this experience, and we're going to deal with them all at the end.
Absolutely. So, you can still do it. That way Quentin can afford lunch today.
That's right.
Quentin only gets Super Chat money, and so if you want him to get a sandwich
contract
or even a crust of bread, then this is what you have to do, because we're not going to do it.
He's a horrible manager, okay? His manager signed him up and said, yeah, listen, here's the contract. He signed it, and it turns out he only gets paid in Super Chat money.
There you go. All right.
And YouTube keeps a third of that, so,
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, as always. And let's go ahead and dive into it, shall we? So we've got the... Oh, you know what? Let's actually... Before we do that, let's talk about how we're going to be ranking these armies today.
Absolutely. Go for it.
All right. So the way that we're going to be talking about these armies today is we're evaluating each faction as if it's being played by a faction expert. We are evaluating the ceiling of the army, not the midline of the army. Absolutely. And so that will sometimes lead, like it does every single time, to a tier list that maybe does not look like it's purely by win rate. Because, you know what? Fun fact, it's not.
It's not.
It's not.
If you want a tier list that's pure by win rate, it's actually super easy. You get a stat check. We love those guys. You go over there, and I believe it ranks them for you. It's just like top to bottom, done. Easy. Yep. But fortunately for us, I guess, I don't know, the game actually looks a little different when people, are on table, 1 through 10 as opposed to an entire breadth of an event or even practice games at home.
Absolutely. So we are, when we're doing this, we will kind of account how good is the faction in singles, how good is it in teams, and we'll try to put a complete picture together. But we are always looking at this under the assumption that one of the best players for that faction is the one playing that faction.
Absolutely.
And so it's just not all about the win rates.
No, it's not.
Well, let's move on to that first faction, shall we?
That's right. All right, we got Custodes.
All right, Adeptus Custodes got a bit of a buff in Pariah Nexus. Got a codex earlier in the year. Jack, you're a relatively passionate Custodes enthusiast.
Yeah, I love my Custodes. I love my Golden Boys. I've loved them for a while. Unfortunately, not a huge fan of this current iteration of the codex. I think it's really monodimensional, and that I think is going to be ultimately its calling card here on the list. It does have some power to it. There are some data sheets that are pretty decent. It has a Caladius Grav tank, just kind of wins shootouts. It made our top 10
Pretty
tank
good.
list. It's really good. And the Venatari, pretty solid. They're not like as good as I thought they were going to be at 165 for 3, but they are solid. They hit hard, and they are reasonably durable, and they're reasonably quick, and you can jump on people with a multiple rapid ingress sort of strategy. They're pretty solid.
Yeah.
Wardens are pretty solid. A unit of guard, custodian guard with Draxus is pretty solid. Pretty good, honestly. But the main issue is there's just not a lot of rules supporting those data sheets. There's very few rules escorting them to the point where they might get to use those stats effectively. And that holds them back in my mind somewhat.
Yeah, and I think the way that I kind of see Custodians is that they're good up until a point, but once the ride is too tall to ride, that's kind of it.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so, yep. So you can kind of enter that space where you go in with the Custodians, and once you find the bad matchup, you can't do anything about it.
Yes.
And that's always a difficult place to be, because as much as I like Custodians, I think that they just run into some problems. They're good until you find the bad matchup, and then you don't have play options. And that's one of the big things that defines an army being good, is how much can the player do about being in trouble. Some armies are flexible. Even when you're in trouble, you can still make plays and you can try.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's no army right now that is that is out of the ability to win an event, right? A good player playing an army really well, it's always been really about the players and less about the armies, especially right now with the meta as relatively balanced as it is. There is no army where a really good player can't go to an event and do well with it. That just doesn't exist right now. As emphasized with Innes Wilson going 7-0 at an event in
England.
In England, okay. I knew there was an event with GSC, an army that is not the best. Now, usually what you need for that is for an army to be dynamic, right? You need the army to have something where a really good player can use a lot of the tools and intricacies to their advantage. Custodians don't really have that. And for that, I think they're going to end up in C tier for me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. They've got just the one detachment right now that's really seeing play. The Shield Host definitely seems to have risen to the top, but even though they've got some event wins, it does feel like they're on the lower end.
Absolutely.
All right. So C tier for the Custodians. It's all in the name.
That makes sense, right? Custodians, C tier, whole deal. Yeah. All right.
So the next army that we've got coming up is another army that got some buffs in ye old Pariah Nexus. So another one that got some love. So this is Admech. Admech got massive overhauls. No other way to put it, right?
They took data sheets that didn't have offense or whatever, and they just stapled new guns onto them.
Yeah, just whole new guns. Just let's just pretend that we did a little typo, and we're just gonna give them new guns. That helps.
Yes,
that helps a lot.
Yes. They became a real army. It's like when Pinocchio became a real boy. Like they went from a deeply flawed army where you could take a million chickens that were undercosted because they didn't do anything, and
a new loan on your house,
right? Hope you didn't want that car or both of your kidneys, because you don't need both, right? You just need the one. And then you get to play Admech. Now your army won't do anything, but there'll be so much of it you get to score. That's not where they're at anymore. GW went in and fixed it, holistically, right? They went in and just fixed the profiles that needed fixing. They can put, Band-Aids over it as much as they wanted. It wasn't going to fix the problem, which was the data sheets were a joke. Like they just didn't have offense. And now they do. And they also gave them some good army rules as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Admech is a significantly more interesting army because they also went up in points with the glut of new rules that they received, which I think is fair. You don't want to give an army massive buffs and not touch the points and just see what happens. That's a recipe for disaster. We've seen it before.
Yes.
But I quite like what they did with Admech, and the vibe I've gotten from the Admech community is that the army has a lot more options than before, and it's more fun to play than before. I don't think that it's necessarily the best army in the game, and that'll probably represent where we put it, but it's a much more interesting faction than it was previously.
Yeah, I honestly don't think its rating is going to change that much, but it is just a better army for the player. Like its rating and how fun it is to play and how well designed it is skyrockets. The problem is an identity of having a lot of stuff is a viable one and can help you win events. It's just not fun if you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Right, I watched Richard roll out 1,000,000 guns that did nothing. He was not having a good time, and now he is, because he will shoot you to death.
Hey, every 6 minutes of chess clock, he kills an intercessor. What else could you ask for?
Oh, it's all this. That's fixed now.
Yeah,
okay, that's fixed now. When he shoots you with the guns, they actually sting like they should. I mean, they have big las cannons. Why weren't they hurting? But they are now, and that is what's important.
So let's put this on the list.
Absolutely,
they were B tier before. I'm inclined to put them in there again.
I think they're a definition of a solid army. They can give some armies real problems. Stealth army-wide in the Hunter cohort is actually nasty for some other shooting armies. Like Guard don't want any part of that. Like Guard have their own stuff, but Guard do not like army-wide stealth.
Or do they?
Tau also do not like army-wide stealth. I can promise you that. And some armies just really, really struggle to deal with, wow, every shot I take is -1 to hit. Not just one, not for a strat, not sometimes, always. And that is legitimately an edge that they have sometimes over other shooting armies. And then they also got that plus ballistic skill if they're in the shooty doctrine. I forget the names. It's a Conqueror and Protector, but I don't remember which is which. One of them gives you +1 AP if you're in your battle line, and +1 weapon skill, and -1 to hit and combat? No, that's Protector. Anyway, and then Protector gives you -1 to hit in combat. Oh, Assault. That's what the other one was. Assault, +1 AP while you're within 6 inches, and +1 weapon skill. And the other one gives you +1 ballistic skill, heavy, and -1 to hit in combat while you're within 6 inches of battle line. I cannot believe I got that right.
You know what? You might not have.
I might not have
read me Age of Sigmar rules, and I would have nodded.
That's right. But going back and forth between the two, or designing a list for one or designing a list for the other, is actually really interesting.
And I like the little battle line tie-ins.
Yeah, it's cool. It's not 100% tied into battle line, but you get a very nice buff if you have battle line. So I would say B tier is perfect for it.
Okay, so what army's up next? We're going through the A's, so it's got to be the Craft Worlds up next, right?
I would assume so. There we go. All right. So up next is Aeldari.
All right. Previously A tier, A for Aeldari. We'll see how they stack up here. So you've actually played Aeldari a little bit this bounce patch, right?
Quite a bit, actually. It is probably not even probably. It is definitely my most experienced army in Pariah Nexus, which is a little odd for me personally. But I've played multiple events with Aeldari in Pariah Nexus, and there's a lot of different ways you can build Eldar, and I think there's a lot of them that are traps. I think the MSU variation of Eldar has a lot of serious problems. I don't think it's actually that great. I think it's fine. It's like B tier. It's kind of whatever. But Quentin and I have been working on Wraithguard coming back. The Harlequin troop brick has a very good synergy with the Wraithguard. And then you can do a lot of nonsense around that. We did a couple videos on it, honestly. But the list that I played to a recent team event is 10 Wraithguard, the full Harlequin fight first brick, and then the Avatar, and then a bunch of supporting characters and units. And that list felt actually really good. Wraithguard right now there's going to be a lot of things I'm going to talk about where it feels like the game has come down around the units or around the army, and they're primed for a resurgence. And I think Wraithguard are one of those things where back like a year, 6 months ago or whatever, people could kill 10 Wraithguard if you had issue. Like if you exposed them and then they hit them, they could kill them. That has largely gone away, especially when you factor in Fire and Fade, Phantasm. You only go out once your opponent has been shot to pieces. That unit is really good now because a lot of the army's damage output have come down across the board, which is really solid for Wraithguard. I think that Brick Eldar is actually really, really solid right now. I don't think it's like broken or anything, but I think it is a very solid army that can do very good results. It is very techy. It's very like intricate and has very few units, so you have to know exactly what you're doing with them. But when you do, you can get in some board positions that feel downright unfair.
Yeah, Eldar always, have been an army that's trying to not play the game fair. And it almost seems like the power level of Eldar is how much they are forced to play Warhammer 40,000 with the opponent.
Yes.
And the more Warhammer the Eldar player has to actually play, the worse the army is.
Yes. So, I mean, I took it to a recent team event, and I got second on the War Master track, on the Battle Master track. The list felt like it was firing on all cylinders. I think it's really solid, and I want to put it probably not going to end up as the top of A, but probably down towards the bottom of A. I think that build is particularly good. I think the old MSU probably somewhere in B.
Yeah, I honestly, I kind of want to play against the little brick style a little bit more. I still have a couple of doubts about the Eldar, but you've taken them to events and you put up some good results with them, right? You took them to a GT as well?
I did. I took him to a GT, and I got first, undefeated. Quentin got second on tiebreakers that were like microns apart. We were both undefeated at that event. And then I updated the list and took it to a team event, and I think it's really solid. I think it's really solid.
Very nice. All right. Let's start talking about my armies, shall we?
Of course. Absolutely.
I would like to get some of my armies on
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
What do we got next?
Redo the order. Put guard down.
Put guard down.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Astra Militarum.
We're going to talk about guard. I promise. It's not Chaos Demons.
Nope. It's Astra Militarum.
It's guard.
This is what we're doing.
Yes.
So I love where Astra Militarum are at right now. They finally changed the army rule and made it less boring to play with, which is what I wanted, because I like it when my armies are both fun to play and good. That's what I don't ask for much, right? I just want my armies to be fun to play and the best in the game.
I was with you right up until right up until that last part right there.
Yeah.
But I don't think guard are necessarily the best army in the game, but they are pretty cool.
I quite like where guard are at. When they got the Pariah Nexus change to get lethal hits in situations other than firing an indirect weapon.
The standing still and shooting.
It really helped the army because guard needs to be moving. You have to be moving around the table to play guard and to play the table and to play Pariah Nexus. And stationary army rules are bad. That is why we aren't going to be ranking the Anvil Siege Force particularly highly, because you have to move to play Warhammer.
You really do.
You really do.
If you don't move, I promise you will not get good lines of sight in.
Yep.
Most of the time. It is your capability of moving that forces your opponent into your lines of sight, honestly. Because you can move and get that line of sight, so they have to move to compensate for it.
Yep.
And if your army says, hey, we're cool if we do not move,
nothing's going to happen.
Then nothing's going to happen. Yeah.
So I quite like where guard are at. They've actually been putting up some rather good results. They're at WTC, they were very good for several teams.
Oh, they're insane in teams.
They're
sure.
very good in teams. I love what Bulgrin do right now, just as a durable unit that is not that expensive and requires, to deal with them, you to step in front of the guns. I love what the change did for some of the infantry units, Scions especially, ignoring the new models that I'm sure will get cooler rules eventually. Just current Scions are great. Yeah, they are fantastic. I've played them a couple of times in the Warm already. We've got some more games coming up with them. I really am high on guard right now. They play the Pariah Nexus missions super well because they have units that are willing to go out and die for the Emperor. They can reach almost every part of the board that matters for drawing cards. You have plenty of CP. You have enough guns to get the job done. You've got thick units that don't mind getting in combat. It's not super dynamic in the same way that some armies are, where they can fire and fade, advance and shoot, fall back and charge. But the order system is actually quite strong.
Yeah, you can either have your Bulgrin go faster or be hit harder or hold objectives better. All that's really good.
And you have enough units that you can cycle them. Instead of having a great thing that can fall back and shoot, you have two things. One of them gets tagged and then falls back and does nothing, and then their friends shoot for them.
Yes. I've seen a variety of lists do well. I've seen tank spam, whether that's Rogel Dorns or that's the Lehman Rush, do quite well. I mean, basically every guard list that it does remotely well has 18 Bulgrins in front of it. because they're bananas.
I love those boys.
And then, so you can take a lot of tanks, especially in teams. That's a very good build. And then you can also take just a few tanks and then a bunch of scoring trash in the middle, which I know is the one that you currently like.
Oh, I like 18 Bulgren, 3 tanks, and scoring trash.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
we're keeping the 18
few
Bulgren.
tanks is 3 tanks.
Yeah, plus 4 support tanks, so then it's like 7 tanks. 7 tanks, some Bulgren, and a lot of trash, and then it's done.
No one was really expecting Imperial Guard to come out of the gate swinging with not many tanks.
Yeah, you gotta have some tanks.
You gotta have some tanks.
It's Guard.
For sure.
I very like where the army is right now. It's a lot more fun to play than it was previously. It's a lot more about the decisions of the player than it was previously. And I genuinely think, despite the nerfs to indirect, that the army is better now. Because you just don't have to take indirect, because now you can get a little bit more output out of the not indirect things. And you get less output out of the indirect, so let's change. Let's take the direct fire guns, and that's totally fine.
You know what's better than indirect is being able to hold objectives in the middle of the board.
Yeah, that is important.
You just pivot to that. Guess what? That is better than just sitting back and shelling.
Yep. Yeah, the army is just much better at scoring, still does damage. And in Pariah Nexus, it's all about scoring right now.
Yeah.
And so just being able to maintain that pace for as long as possible, I think is super important. So I love Astra Militarum. And I think that A and Astra, I think that's the tier they're going in.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've got guarded 8 tier.
Yep. I do think they are better than Aeldari right now. But I for sure, they go in A tier with a bullet. I don't think they're like S tier or whatever. They're just a really solid army, like really good.
Yep.
And that's where they go.
Yeah, and we'll probably, since this is the first time we've actually double stacked a tier so far, I think we're going to end up fixing the order a little bit later, right? Just for now, we put them in the order, and then we'll revisit a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So next up, we've got one of my armies. We're back to me. We got the Templars.
Ooh. Templars
are an army near and dear to my heart. They hit hard in melee. It's kind of what they do. They don't really do too much else. Their other gimmick really is being able to staple multi-meltas to Primaris vehicles, which is not horrible. A lot of the time you'd see Black Templar Iron Storm because, hey, why not just take the Iron Storm that has like 4 extra multi-meltas? No reason not to, really.
Yeah.
Now there's a decent amount, decent reason not to. There's points increases, and if you take Black Templars, you can't not take the Templar variants. But still, Templars are pretty solid as a vehicle army as well. The thing that really defines them is probably going to be their unique melee units, whether that is Primaris Crusaders or Sword Brethren. Yep. Now, Primaris Crusaders, I think for singles is not that great. It is very vulnerable to running into the wrong army and just getting immediately knocked out. But if you can't handle it, my God, you will get annihilated. And that makes it great for teams.
Yeah, we saw at WTC Team France specifically got some very good results out of their Black Templar build. Olivier was instrumental for them getting gold at WTC this year.
Absolutely. And he did win War Masters, so the army is not like dead or anything in singles. It's not terrible in singles, but I believe it is, in my opinion, it's a little, luck of the draw on singles. You still have to win the games that you play, but if you go in and your opponent's packing, a bunch of hammerheads with ion, you're probably getting lit up.
Yeah. I don't even know if that does it fast enough. 120 is many boys.
100. I hit 100. He hit
118 bodies.
18 bodies, yeah, counting characters and whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know how fast it gets it done, but there are armies that can, and you have to stay out of those.
There are armies that can. If someone can lift power armor at the right speed, it is awesome, and if it can't, it is awesome for the Templar player.
Yep.
So, and most armies can't. But I don't know how often we're going to see that army actually emerge in the single scene due to the logistical complications to running 118 Space Marine bodies.
I also suspect that archetype of Black Templars, there are multiple, that archetype of Black Templars, I suspect will live as a niche pick for basically ever.
Yep.
Because if it is in the public eye a lot, teams will have answers for it. Singles players will, if it's the best army in the game or whatever, people will be ready for it, and they will pack a million ways to kill power armor to their armies. That doesn't necessarily guarantee them a win, but it does make the Black Templar, the Black Tide.
Yeah.
Black Tide. It does make their job a lot harder. So if people are packing multiple Forge Fiends, that would get it done.
Yeah, triple Forge Fiend is problematic.
It's harsh.
It's
what
rough.
it is.
It's rough out there.
So I think it's really good as a niche because as soon as people forget it exists, it'll clock you. It'll just annihilate you. But if it's on your mind, you're probably ready for it. So it'll go through cycles. Sword Brethren are also really good. I think the Black Templar Gladius is still a pretty solid army. And I think that Righteous Crusaders is a little non-dynamic, but it is still pretty outside of the Black Tide, although that is also not dynamic. It's just a big fist.
Just very good at what it does.
Right into your face. I do think multiple 10-man bricks of Sword Brethren are also primed to be explored right now. There's multiple builds. I think it's really cool. I think it has dropped off.
Yep.
A lot of the points changes have started to catch up with it. Every time I go back to write a Black Templar list, every time it's like, wow, this list has gone up 50 points or 60 points or whatever. And after 4 balance passes, it's now 300 points higher than it was when I took it to WCW a year ago. And that adds up pretty substantially.
It really does.
I forget. It was definitely over 200 points higher than it was back at WCW. It was 250 or something.
Yeah.
And that adds up and it's caught up. And it does mean that it's dropped probably down to Black Templar tier.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that because we have all the different alternate Space Marine chapters right now. At the moment, I feel like Black Templars is the one that I'm least excited about. Just of the 4, Blood Angel, Dark Angel, Space Wolves, Black Templars, not to spoil where everyone else is going. It just feels like Black Templars don't have as much going on.
Yeah, I think they still have plenty of stuff to do. I think they're a really well designed army. Personally, I think they're fun, but I do think their power level has dropped off since every balance patch basically, and it's caught up to them a little. All right, next up we've got the Blood Angels. Very, previously S tier, very close army to my heart. We're going to rank the new codex.
Yep.
So this is, ranking the old codex is kind of pointless.
Yeah, there's no reason to do that anymore.
The old codex is a solid, mid of A tier army, I believe. I don't believe it's S tier. It is solid. I played it in Pariah Nexus to ATC. It was good. It was not insane. It was just good.
I think it started to drop off a little bit from what you were saying before, which is that if it's the best, if Black Templar Black Tide were to be the best thing, people would come correct. I think the same thing happened to Blood Angels.
That could very well happen.
Blood Angels were doing so well and winning so many events that everyone who was going to an event with aspirations of victory was like, all right, well, I'm going to practice into Blood Angels and I'm going to plan for Blood Angels. And so I think Blood Angels started to slide a little bit before the Codex come out from being, arguably best army in the game to a very good army.
Yeah, I don't think they were ever best army in the game, but they were pretty damn good.
There was a month where they were winning every event.
That's true. I think you might be. Well, I have not. I don't really follow the tournaments, the results. That could be fair. I think you're onto something. I do think if you're not ready for if you weren't ready for Blood Angels at that point in time, it was a real problem. I think ultimately where they probably would have landed with the old book is middle of A tier. Probably where
with the index.
Yeah, with the index. The current book, I actually really like. I really like the current book, or the new one. The new book, which comes out sometime in the future because of the way they do their box sets, which
which you love.
I love so much. I love having the rules, but being told I don't have the rules yet, so I can't play it.
Well, you think you'll find that you don't have the rules.
I don't have the rules, actually. But what we really don't have are the points. And that is unfortunate. So we have to rank the army based... You can't rank the army without ranking points. Points are the balancing factor of the game. You have to have correct points in order to rank the army properly. So we have to go off the back of the book points. And to me, I think that the Codex is really dynamic, really cool. I love it. I want to play it. But I think the back of the book points are a little too onerous for the book right now, and that holds it back probably, in my mind, to being somewhere around the top of B tier.
Yeah, I think that they're a little bit better than that, but the reality is that we're not going to ever get that event data until the Codex comes out with points, and it could just be a thing of, if we get the Codex and the updated MFM and Sengard go down 10, 15, 20 points per 3, suddenly they are an A-tier army, or maybe they go up 5 points when the book comes out. Jack's rolling his eyes back into the, out of the house.
They're rolling out of the back of my head and down the road. Like, I would be mad if that happened.
And at that point, that would be quite bad for your army. I think Sanguinary Guard are the most important data sheet in that codex.
For sure, because the army lost a lot. It did, objectively. Like,
it gained a lot.
It gained a lot, but it lost a lot. And that's a very good balance to have. It gained some stuff, lost some things, totally fine. It fleshed out the army into being a broader spectrum. The army before was a lot of AP 1 and 2, which was a serious problem sometimes. And it relied very heavily on Death Company.
Yep.
Death Company got, or as far as back of the book points are concerned, got cheaper. We'll have to see what the end up is. But if they're the 140 for 5, it's a no sell for me.
Yeah, that's fake.
So they lost a lot of offense. What they gained was points back. So now we need something to solve that offense. Now, Sanguinary Guard are AP3, which is pretty huge for the army. Having a heavy hitter at AP3 solves a lot of the, 2-up save, Armor of Contempt problems that the army actually seriously had before. I ran into some 2-up armor saves, Armor of Contempt, and it was a real issue because you topped out at AP2.
Yep.
So where they balance the remainder of the codex definitely matters. The Sanguinary Guard, as you said, are the most important. The army gained advance and charge, which as a rule is massive. So we just have to see where the points land. With current points, I would rate them as being fine. Just fine, solid, decent, probably top of B.
Okay. So ahead of the Admech and the Templars of the world? I definitely agree with.
I think so. We would definitely need to, see some more results, but the army looks fine at current points cost. So we'll have to see.
Okay. Let's rock and roll into the next faction, shall we?
Absolutely. We got Chaos Demons.
All right. So Chaos Demons, what a weird place they've been in just for the Handwave edition. Demons have been strange the entire time, I feel.
They've been a little odd, for sure. They teleport around, but they're kind of not that good at it.
Yeah, because they don't. Not a lot of the stuff teleports and shoots. But they got buffs in the Pariah Nexus patch. They've started to put together some actual decent results. I think we've seen a small number of event wins out of Chaos Demons. I don't think it's been a ton. But it's so hard because the big models got the rules buff. So now you just take more big models. And then that is actually pretty good until you run into one infiltrator squad. And then it's not.
Yeah. I mean, so they're teleporting armies that do damage when they show up. Unfortunately, these don't.
Yeah. But then they're thick.
But then they're unreasonably durable. Keepers, if you take a bunch of them, good luck getting through that quickly. Just have fun with that. -1 to hit, high toughness, invuln, feel no pain, lots of wounds, they heal. Have fun with that. Realistically, have a good time. And the Great Unclean One with a 4 of feel no pain is also really, really durable. And then Kairos Fate Weaver's a really good data sheet because Vect on a durable monster is
super cool. Yeah,
really solid. Making strats cost more is not something the game was designed to accommodate. So you can take a lot of monsters, and in fact, I think you have to.
Yeah.
And you can be incredibly durable and put a lot of OC on objectives, and a lot of armies can't get rid of you. I think in terms of, if we looked purely at teams, I think it would be an A-tier army for me personally.
Yeah.
Because you can match it up really well into some things that can't handle you, or you match it up into very fragile things that try to hide, and then your teleports actually do damage. Now, we're not ranking this in terms of just teams, but I wanted to give that note.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And for singles play, my thought with Chaos Demons is that that thickness takes them so far, where sometimes you find the wrong profile, and then you die.
You also can't guarantee you kill them, because I've experienced handing a Demons player 7 saves, they fail one of them, and I lose the game.
That is an option. Bad. But then the Demon player in a singles event, sometimes they get handed 7 saves, fail 6, and they just lose.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
very frustrating to play against, very frustrating to play with. My favorite combination.
It's fantastic. Yeah, because what kills big monsters is single big damage saves.
Yep.
And if you have a 4-up invuln on those, who knows what happens? You don't.
Yep.
I don't. We find out.
Yeah, it could just go wrong.
Yes.
And so that's spooky.
Yeah, I legitimately think that Chaos Demons are still pretty decent because they are, yes, they can be a little swingy with 4-up invulns, but the amount of 4-up invulns they have to fail in order to die is actually quite substantial.
Yep.
Especially if you just take a lot. Great Unclean ones at 230 are just too cheap for the durability. Yep. Their offense, obviously, is good.
Showed up to class that day.
Sure, like it's present, but it's not real. But like durability wise, you can stack a lot of monsters together, and that can cause real issues. I would probably say middle of B tier.
Yeah, I think B tier is right for Chaos Demons. Yeah, I think they're good. I don't think that they're great. It's just they've got a couple of problems, but then they're more dynamic than some of the armies that we're going to end up having below them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something I want to reiterate is we are going to do all super chats at the end. So we will get to every single super chat on this list, but at the end.
Indeed we are. All right. Well, we're going through the C's. So that means that after Chaos Demons comes Chaos
Titan Legions.
Knight. No, alphabet.
Oh, got it.
No.
My bad. Sorry.
Titan Legion starts with a T. That means it comes after the S.
Me, like GW, forgot Chaos Knights existed.
Hey there. We'll get a change in a balance patch at some point in the calendar year of 2025.
It's 2025. I was going to say 2024 is running out.
No, I'm sure I'll change my list this year. So Chaos Knights have been living in that not bad zone for a very long time. Because they're not bad.
They're not bad.
What they do is very samey, because what you do is that unless a balance patch came out last week, you play all War Dogs.
I don't think it did. I think it's all War Dogs.
Yeah. So, because every time a balance patch comes out last week, you play 1 week with a Big Knight. And then after that week is over, you're like, oh, this was fun. We're going to go back to all War Dogs.
Yeah, that does seem to be what happens. You put a Big Knight in your list, and then you look at it for a long time and go, nah.
Yep. So Chaos Knights they do well because it is a very nice stat check army with high OC and rules that mitigate some of the normal problems you run into with an army that is inherently all vehicles.
Yes.
The move through walls on multiple things, and even getting it on the Big Knights if you're willing to paint one up is very helpful. It's very cool, but at the end of the day, you usually run into problems when your opponent can kill vehicles, can hit you first. And as soon as that happens, you don't have something in Chaos Knights that solves that problem.
No.
Once your opponent is capable of killing a Chaos Knight in melee and is able to do it well or get there first,
or do it multiple times,
you do run into problems because the Chaos Knights don't really do this whole fall back and still be there kind of thing.
Yeah.
They don't do that.
It's also an army that is... So it's an army composed of the best units in it. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, are Brigands and Carnivores.
Yeah, and you take a character as well.
Sure. I mean, you have to legally.
Yep.
So Brigands and Carnivores have no overlap in terms of the phase in which they do damage.
Nope.
So what this means is there is a loss condition. And the loss condition is you lose all of the Brigands or all of the Carnivores.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose all of the Carnivores, all the Brigands get tagged, game ends. If you lose all the Brigands, the Carnivores have to they get move blocked. They have to run down an enemy army. Yeah. They have to hold the objectives while they get shot. It's a real problem.
Yeah.
If your opponent, and then also at the same time, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they have a critical mass issue.
Yes.
12 War Dogs, real good.
Real good.
6 War Dogs, less than half as good as 12 War Dogs.
Yeah, because Chaos Knights aren't an army with rerolls built anywhere in it. You have to take you have to spend 400 points to get reroll ones in a phase, which you usually don't do for the 400 point reason. And so you run into a problem where 4 Brigands pointed at a tank is going to get there. 2 Brigands pointed at a tank might get there, might just not.
Yes.
And as soon as you are low on dogs, your activations become very important with no backup plan.
Yes.
I love Chaos Knights. I actually still have quite a bit of fun playing them.
They are super cool.
It's a super cool army. I think that competitively they have big problems where they just run into they just have too many problems. They run into the what if my opponent can hide behind a wall and just kill me if I get near them.
Yeah, you don't have a great answer to that.
Nope, because yes, you can move a carnivore through a wall and charge something, but as soon as your opponent is not vulnerable to a carnivore charge, that's your only plan for dude behind a wall.
Well, in the same way that you mentioned that brigands require like 2 or 3 to bring a target down, carnivores do require the same thing.
Yeah, like a carnivore definitely can kill a rhino. It happens more than half the time.
Well, it's also the infantry that's the problem.
Yep.
So many times I've had a carnivore charge one carnivore.
Yeah.
Right. One is fine. One carnivore charges one of my elite infantry units, kills some amount of it that isn't all of it.
Kills like 2 blade guards, something like relatively normal. That's not crazy.
And then dies.
Yeah.
And that has happened a lot. I've had carnivores charge into my world eaters, and if it's just one carnivore, guess what happens? It's not that the carnivore wins that fight. I've had carnivores charge into the Space Wolf unit when we were during our game. One carnivore made it in, killed 2 guys, died. It's just that happens. So you need multiple carnivores on target, which means you need multiple carnivores in that area of operations, which means, oops, I lost all the brigands or all the carnivores on that area of the board, and suddenly I can't reliably kill anything.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem Chaos Knights have is just that the army has been pinned into being, I am just a stat. Like, I am just of these data sheets because the detachment rule and the army rule come up every other game. And when they do come up in every other game, it comes up on turn 3 of every other game, not turn 1.
What is the detachment rule again?
Okay. So
I know the army rule is like you take battle shocks or something.
The detachment rule is you take a battle shock if you're below starting strength within 12 of a Chaos Knight.
That's the detachment rule?
That is the detachment rule.
So then what in God's name is the army rule?
The army rule is that if you are within 12 inches of a Chaos Knight, you are -1 leadership from turn 1 on. And then from turn 3 on, if you're battle shocked within 12 of a Chaos Knight, they're +1 to wound you, you're -1 to hit Chaos Knights. That is battle round 3 on while you're battle shocked.
That's a lot of hoops to jump through.
It does not come up terribly often.
I can see why. It also, that seems like an army rule and a detachment rule that just need to be redone when the codex comes out. Because I cannot imagine the army rule without the detachment rule making people to take battle shock checks.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
Yep. Yeah. Once that's the ruling, you're not making people take battle shock tests. Like, throw it out.
Yeah.
I love me some Chaos Knights, but in too many games, that rule does not affect the outcome of the game in any tangible fashion. And then we are just playing. These are the data sheets I brought. The stratagems. There's like 3 stratagems that are quite decent, and then there are 2.5 data sheets that are quite decent.
Yeah.
And that's what you're playing with.
Yeah, the army gets, I want to say something positive about it before we rank it. The army gets a lot of its strength, right? The strength that it has, it gets from the fact it is it's a stat check that is relatively good at that job.
Yeah, and that makes it better in teams than singles.
Yep, 100%. It is relatively fast.
Yep.
It hits relatively hard working together.
Quite high OC.
Quite high OC. It's tough to hold objectives against it because everything gets wounded, and then you start having to take battle shock checks at -1.
Yep.
It has a lot. If your opponent cannot just rip through a bunch of toughness 10 vehicles really quickly, which a decent amount of people can't.
Yeah.
If they can't deal with that at speed, they will get run over.
Yeah.
But
big picture, I think Chaos Knights have similar problems to Custodes.
I would tend to agree. They just kind of got to walk into a scenario and find out
if it works or not.
Does it work? Does it not?
And at a very high level, when it doesn't work, it's hard to play around it.
Yes.
You can be cagey with Chaos Knights, you can lose close. But if I'm trying to win an event with Chaos Knights,
that does not sound like fun.
No, I just have to make a blood offering to Best Coast Parents.
Easy.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, just
No
don't
problem.
ever get Tau or AdMech or any of that.
I hope we'll go first.
Don't get World Leaders.
Yeah, no, can't do that one. I have nothing for that.
No, that matchup is one of the most horrific in the game.
I have nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm inclined to put Chaos Knights in C tier. I love
100%.
Chaos Knights. I don't think that they're far. My fervent hope is that they add some kind of way to make Battle Shock more relevant in the Codex. Because we know that Imperial Knights are coming, I am like coping and assuming that Chaos Knights are like close behind them because they always do Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights at the same time.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that Chaos Knights come out close to Imperial Knights.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
That would be really cool. I'd love to see you and Brian bash.
Dude, that joust, we're going to do a 2 out of 3 on YouTube.
Did we do that? I think we did that. Not on stream, but
Yeah.
you and I, when the codexes came out, we did a best 2 of 3 with Imperial versus Chaos Knights.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. It was strictly who went first back in 9th edition.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the next one. I mean, you can guess what's next, right?
After Chaos Knights and Chaos Demons.
Before Chaos Titan Legions.
Now, okay, before Chaos Titan Legions, it's Chaos Space Marines.
Correct. All right.
Previously,
CSM.
A tier?
CSM have been rising in my evaluation recently.
Yes.
I honestly, I think that when we did this Pariah Nexus tier list before, I think I wanted CSM like lower than A tier.
Yeah, you definitely.
I was low
You
on them.
definitely want them higher than I was initially going to put them, but the army does have some power to it, which is nice. I don't personally love the Renegade Raiders that I've seen everyone and their mother play.
Well, I mean, Chaos Cult's just one Nova.
Listen, the Accursed Cultists slam. That is a
Put enough.
fact.
You take a good data sheet, you stack 4 buffs on it, it will kill lots of people.
Everything it touches.
Just about,
actually.
Yeah. Only 9 consecutive people. I'm sure everyone else could have gotten it though.
Yeah, they would have been the one.
Yep. So we see a couple things coming out for CSM. I think of their 8 detachments. I don't think they've got 8 viable ones. No, they do not.
I think they've got 3.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
Pact Bound.
Yep.
Chaos Cult, apparently. And Raiders are fine. Yeah, they're fine.
I think they're pretty good. We've seen the armies do pretty well. It did a couple of armies performed quite well with Chaos Space Marines at WTC. In some of our testing before WTC, we actually quite liked a Chaos Cult build that we were working on. It ended up not making it just as hard to fit into our roster, but we thought it had some potential. And then sure enough, Chaos Cults go in to win the Nova Open just this past weekend. And they won several events this weekend. But it does seem like Chaos Space Marines are doing a couple of options, not a ton of options. Almost every list that is doing well is hinged around ACDC.
Yeah, Accursed Cultists are going to fall into a similar vein as that Black Templar Black Tide.
Yeah.
Where if you're not ready for them, have fun losing.
Yep.
And if you are ready for them, now it is a game, and depending on how ready for them you are, you might be just significantly advantaged.
The Blood Surge does make it a little more annoying to deal with than a lot of people realize.
For sure.
When they're going into it. And we'll see if maybe it becomes popular enough that people start building to counter it, and then it stops being popular because it got countered. There are options for how this can go. But at the moment, CSM seem to be quite on the rise, but they only have a couple builds.
Yes, it's definitely a rise that can be halted very quickly by a slap to some ACDC. That doesn't take it down off our tier list at all. A top heavy book doesn't matter as long as the top is sufficiently heavy.
But it does mean it's vulnerable to falling.
Absolutely.
But right now they're keeping their balance, theoretically. And so I have CSM kind of up there. I have them in A tier.
Absolutely. Who was it who won Nova?
I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his last name. Derek Apsh. I might be butchering his last name. I don't think I've met the gentleman in question. But he had quite a good run.
Absolutely.
Beat a very diverse array of armies on his way to the top, from what I could see. Did quite well. And, again, won a 300-person super major, give or take. I think is more.
And we don't want to do like recency bias too much. CSM has been doing well generally. not just at Nova this past weekend.
Yeah. They won another event this weekend as well, and they've snuck a couple. And then Team France had a very high scoring Raiders ACDC list that put some real good scalps on.
Absolutely. So congratulations to Derek. And I think the army definitely earns its spot in A tier.
Yeah,
for sure. Don't think it's like the best army in the game, but boy, howdy is it up there.
Yeah. There we go. All right. The chat is informing me that it's pronounced Applebee's, which seems incorrect.
That seems wrong, and you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Yep.
Okay. So what is up next? We've got another one of the John armies.
Yay! I love the John armies.
The John armies are great.
All right. So onto the Dark Angels. Buffed in Pariah Nexus. Thank you very much, GW. I appreciate that greatly. What's that?
I don't...
You got something to say?
If I had been on the tier list previously, they would not have been in A tier. I will tell you that.
No?
No.
I don't think they were a B tier. Let's not get crazy here.
Right. Dark Angels are really goddamn good right now. Like, just really, really, really good. They're especially good in singles. I think they're actually less good in teams than in singles. Just because they're good at getting, like, a solid win across the board.
I love them in teams.
That hurts me. They're really good in teams, too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But why don't you go off?
Yeah, so Dark Angels at the moment are really leaning on the strength of the buffs that they just got. So specifically, you can take very good melee units in Dark Angels, a thing that you did not really have as much before, because Deathwing Knights and Inner Circle Companions both have gotten weapon upgrades in the latest slate. That has been extremely impactful. I love it. Deathwing Knights were good before. I actually was just playing 15 Deathwing Knights before the patch. I played it on a couple of our stream games. It did a little bit better than I expected. And I was like, maybe I'll try to develop this build a little bit more. And then Games Workshop was like, don't worry, John, we're going to make it a lot better. Enjoy. And I paid a small points raise, which I, don't regret. And now they're just strong.
The rest is history. Yeah, the Dark Angel Gladius is one of the strongest armies in the entire game right now.
Yep.
It is incredibly dynamic. It is very durable. It hits hard. It has the perfect triangle.
Yeah. Everything but OC.
Everything but a lot of OC. Deathwing Knights are only one OC. It struggles with that a little bit, but hey, if you're dead, you have 0 OC. So
it's my plan, yeah.
Yeah.
Kill the opponent. Work it out.
Deathwing Knights are something that is very hard to solve for the game right now, honestly. If you have a lot of... they're -1 damage. They have 4 wounds apiece. They have Armor of Contempt, and they have an invuln. If you are 1 damage, i.e. don't care about the -1 damage, you generally have low AC or low AP or low strength.
Yep.
And so you will get wrecked by Armor of Contempt, or by Toughness 5, or by whatever.
Yep.
And if you have, high damage, so you don't care about the -1 because you're going to kill them anyway, generally you're going to bounce off a bunch of invulns and be unreliable in that direction. Also, -1 damage on D6 plus 2 oftentimes just means, hey, I didn't kill the Deathwing Knight. I have to get a second save through.
Yeah.
Which is not great.
Yeah. Funny enough, this is an army that actually Chaos Knights does like to play into.
Yeah.
I do not want that matchup.
The chain cannons are actually kind of rough, and the meltas
chain
are
cannons
rough.
and meltas are just the perfect two
the split.
things. Yeah, it's the split.
It's the split.
I don't want that.
Anything in the middle of that is going to bounce and do nothing.
Yep.
2 damage is what almost all damage in combat is. And that goes to 1. Guess what? If you're half as effective, and oftentimes hard to get above AP2, so you're taking 3 ups with Armor of Contempt, you're going to do nothing to Deathwing Knights. And Deathwing Knights will not return the favor. They will kill you back.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that... So what we see right now is the Dark Angel Gladius as the peak of Dark Angels. The Dark Angel detachments, frankly, aren't doing a lot for them right now. You have several different ways to be just like a take-all-comer army that is not as good at take-all-comer as a Gladius. And then you have the Company of Hunters, which is not doing much. But that's fine. We are ranking the best of Dark Angels, which is the Gladius. And so if you take the Gladius, you give speed and damage output to Deathwing Knights and Inner Circle Companions. That helps a lot.
A lot.
This is an army that, funny enough, has not had tremendous success in the single scene. It's won, I think, 2 events, both of them in the less than 50 people margin. Its win rate is not representative as far as we're concerned?
No, something I've played the Gladius for a long time, ever since Black Templars. Something I've noticed is the Gladius is one of the best rule sets for any army.
Yep.
But for whatever reason, it is much lower represented on win rate. I think it's a little too technical for a lot of people to 100% apply the buffs that it gives you. You have to basically determine what you're going to do with your turn at the start of your turn.
Yep. There's
limited resources.
Yeah.
That you use up. You use up your advance and charge. You use up your advance and shoot and whatnot. There's a lot of using the right units at the right times, but oh my god, are the rules that the Gladius gives you insane. It gives you all of the good ones. It gives you a bunch of damage output buffs. It gives you a unit that shoots so goddamn hard, so insanely hard. The Eradicator brick with a Primaris Apothecary, or a Gravis Apothecary, Biologist, thank you. Fire Discipline in a vehicle of some description shoots really, really hard. You have advance and charge, you have fall back and charge and shoot, and you have advance and shoot. You have a variety of really good stratagems.
You have all the tools.
All the tools.
Yep. The Gladius gives you a lot of tools, but it doesn't make the decisions for you. And so I'm guessing that's where the army can fall in singles, is that it gives you the ability to make choices, but it, you still have to make the right choices.
Make the wrong ones for sure.
Make the wrong ones, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, and when you graft Deathwing Knights on top of that, it is one of the hardest armies in the game to deal with, for sure, for any army, basically.
I think that we're putting it up right at the top.
Absolutely. I think it's coming in as a slick S tier.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, so one of the best armies in the game. I'm 100% okay with that. Anything that we're putting in S tier is something that we expect or believe should get some adjustments in the not so distant future.
In a good player's hands, the Dark Angels Gladius is very good.
Yep. I have had a lot of fun playing this army recently, and I've put up some rather good results both in practice and at events.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Absolutely. You performed very well at WTC with them, for example.
Yep. I've got a couple more events coming up where I'm planning to play Dark Angels, and we'll see if I can keep the ball rolling. But I'm Dark Angel stonks up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Next up, we've got the Death Guard.
The Death Guard. You can see I tripped over my tongue because I was so excited to talk about Death Guard.
Yeah, you couldn't wait to get to Death Guard.
I just couldn't wait.
Death Guard have been an army that has just been falling lately.
Yeah, they got their buffs. They ended up actually being a quite good army, and they've just slowly been taking nerfs.
Yeah, just a little bit here, a little bit there. Sometimes they get buffs to units that are terrible and nerfs to units that are good, and that does not average out. And they've gotten points increases. They suffered a decent amount from the points increases way back when on Brigands, right? Points increases on Brigands, points increases on the characters to go in Plague Marines, points increases on a decent amount of it. And also the meta is just generally a little more hostile to what they're doing than it was before.
Yeah.
So I do think that they are going to take a little bit of a tumble down the tier list from where they were before.
Yeah. Funny enough, I think actually Death Guard are one of the better armies to try to answer something like Dark Angels right now.
Yes. But
I haven't seen Dark Angels take over the meta enough that's going to boost the Death Guard, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, they have issues. They have issues dealing with a lot of high toughness things.
Yes,
because
that aren't infantry.
Because you can reduce their toughness from 11 to 10 or 12 to 11 or 10 to 9, but that doesn't actually make it that much easier to deal with.
Yeah.
And that often involves something being close and dying because of it. Yep. They struggle to deal with things that aren't exactly in their wheelhouse, which is infantry that is within 12 inches of them.
Yep.
If you are infantry and within 12 inches of them, you're dead, at light speed.
Yeah, really should not have done that. Should have thought harder about being within 12 inches of the Death Guard.
Yes.
But,
they also get hit by the grenade nerfs.
Yep. And the indirect nerfs. There's just a couple of little things adding up. And Death Guard was an army that was not really over the line by a lot. And so a couple small nerfs and a couple points changes. And I think the army has fallen a decent amount.
I absolutely think so. It's also very vulnerable to bad matchups. So if you catch an army that can just shoot you to pieces, Death Guard have a real trouble closing the gap because they're pretty slow as far as armies go, not just because they're movement 5. That actually matters less than just not having access to advance and do anything, that is a real issue. You know their threat ranges. Their threat ranges are they get out of their transport, move 8 total, and then they shoot you and charge you. And if you are out of that threat range, it's really not going to hurt that bad. So you can park up there and just hit them.
Yeah, and because Death Guard are an army that's not that dynamic, if a dynamic army takes a couple changes and gets 1 or 2 more bad matchups than before, you can still try to play around it. If a not dynamic army gets a couple of nerfs and gets 1 or 2 more bad matchups than before, that's just another mine you could step on in your path to trying to win an event that you can't do anything about.
Absolutely. Also, they're just not durable. Like, Death Guard are supposed to be durable, and they're just not. There's no real reason why they are.
They have like 2 CP minus 1 damage in combat.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that right?
That's basically it.
Other than that, maybe stealthy.
You can go for, there's multiple ways to get -1 to hit, and there's the way to get -1 weapon skill, bullet skill if you're close to them, which is a trap.
Yeah.
You basically should never pick -1 weapon skill and ballistic skill. You should almost always pick -1 armor, because that sacrifices the one thing you do well, which is kill people if they get really close to you. And all of a sudden, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah,
and then they just get to walk up to you and punch you.
If you ever lose that aspect of yourself, you have lost everything.
Yeah, your greatest defense is people get close to you and die. If they get close to you and take some amount of damage that isn't death, then you have no defense. And I promise you, -1 weapon skill ain't going to save you.
Yep.
I've experienced that multiple times. -1 weapon skill, -1 ballistic skill. People pick it, and then they can't kill me. And guess what? They died anyway.
Yeah, I've played against a couple of times with Tyranids, and I just shoot them from 12.1 inches away, or maybe even from 17.1 inches away if I'm feeling froggy.
Yep, I've experienced it with World Leaders. I just walked up into their auras and killed them anyway because they couldn't kill me back.
Hate that.
Yeah, I was taking 4-ups against their flamers. What is that? Like, that's just not
that.
Yeah. So the army's fragile and slow and not that dynamic.
Sad. You can still do
unfortunately
things
is.
like a tank spam with Mortarion, or just a big thickness with a Great Unclean One or Rodigus, or just allying some thickness and going big. But that is just going to end up as a stat check, and I don't think it's the best way to do that stat check in the game.
It's a very vulnerable stat check, which I don't love.
Yeah. I don't like that plan, to be clear.
Oh, yeah, no, I did not think you were saying that.
Yeah, some people do it. But for my money, I think that Death Guard have fallen a tier.
Absolutely. I think they've tumbled down into mid C tier.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think C tier. And they still have good matchups. I think this is an army that is better in teams than singles, because when you find the right matchups, Death Guard still punish people, but they just have less of them, and so it's really hard to make a good singles run right now with them.
For example, I think the army could actually be pretty good into the Black Tide.
Yeah.
Damage up close, especially into a lot of infantry. Guess what? It's a sad army right there across the table from them.
I actively do not want to play against Death Guard with Dark Angels.
But a couple decent matchups does not a good army make. Also, notably, those are armies without a lot of long-range shooting, because long-range shooting gets their goat.
Yeah. Once the Death Guard just is getting outshot, it is rough.
Yes. I will tell you that I've played several games into Death Guard with the Gladius, not the Dark Angel version, but other versions. And the Eradicators are misery for them. Just pop vehicle, get back in the transport, pop vehicle, get back in the transport if they get close. Like, there are some real issues that they can present.
Yeah, I believe it. All right. Let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right, let's stir the pot a little bit, shall we? We've got Drukhari coming up here.
People haven't been mad enough. Time to get that going.
Absolutely. So we previously put Drukhari in B tier, even though they had been performing pretty decently going into the Pariah Nexus meta, and they've actually performed better in Pariah Nexus meta, and yet we do not have faith in that.
No, they have performed very poorly anytime I have seen them on the table, and that does not just mean when Quentin plays them.
Yeah.
I have never seen the fabled Drukhari are good at any point ever in a tournament, on a stream, or when I've seen them physically on the table in front of me.
Yeah, so Drukhari as an army did get that, that Sky Splitter detachment a little bit ago. They have won a couple of events. They have a relatively high win rate. I think they're top 3 in the current meta. Like, on paper, looks like a good army. I think that what Drukhari does sets it up very well to capitalize on mistakes.
Yes.
Because it's fast stuff, hitting relatively hard, out of transports, getting back in, fire and fading. It's a lot of Eldar, haha, you can't interact with me, and I hit pretty hard. Not like crazy hard, though.
No, not crazy
Not
hard.
crazy hard.
Very vulnerable to a single defensive mechanic, just invalidating them. -1 damage takes incubi and just means that they don't do anything.
Yeah.
It, -1 to wound, also really nasty for them to cancel out. If you bring them back to before their buff, right? If you give them -1 damage, or if you give them -1 to wound, even -1 to hit sometimes, 4-up rerollables is kind of a little swingy. And they don't have a ton of attacks. They have 3 apiece, which is not ideal. I've seen Scourges completely and utterly whiff.
Yeah, if you once you run out of pain tokens, it's painful. Yeah. And even if you have a pain token, a smoke can ruin your day.
Yes. I've seen a lot of the time that it takes 2 units to kill a unit. It takes 2 Drukhari units to kill 1 unit, which means it takes 2 pain tokens to get 1 pain token. And yes, you can 4-up, get them back. But the problem is, if you stumble and go to 0, you cannot get pain tokens because your units aren't good without them. Like, it's straight up, your units just suck if they don't have pain tokens. And they're decent if they do. But pain tokens are such a low resource, and you're always scraping the bottom of the barrel, that if you ever just run dry, guess what? Your shooting phase didn't work properly. So now you don't have enough for your fight phase. And then you didn't kill anything, so you don't get more going into your next turn.
Yeah. What kills me with Drukhari, and the reason we're going to put them much lower on the tier list than stats would suggest, is that I think they drop off really hard into a prepared opponent who knows what they're doing. Everyone's first game into Drukhari, they get caught off a little bit because the army does not play like a typical army and has unique rules. However, I just don't see Drukhari beating prepared opposition very often. This is something we experienced at WTC with Team USA. We were not considering Drukhari seriously. We got a little tip that a lot of European teams did like Drukhari, and so we went and practiced against it a lot. And you know what? We lost some of those practice games, and then we figured it out. And then we stopped losing.
Yep.
And by the time we were playing it at WTC against Team USA, Drukhari's total score was 0. They did not score a diff point against us at WTC.
Yep.
Because we had the matchups for it, and we found them and said, Drukhari do not function against this. Over.
Done.
20-0.
Yep.
And when you get Drukhari to work, they look like one of the best armies in the game. But when you are not prepared for them, and when you are prepared for them, are just different things.
If you walk into a game with Drukhari and you say, they're a terrible army, I'm just going to steamroll this dude, you can run into scenarios where you get cracked and it goes poorly.
Absolutely.
But if you go in with respect and you play the game, a lot of the time you can just wipe the floor with them.
Absolutely. The first time I played Dark Angels into Drukhari, I lost 9 Deathwing Knights in 1 turn. I was not expecting it, not going to lie.
Yeah.
Was there an amount of 4-up invulns being rolled and failed there? Yeah, of course there was. But
it happens.
It happens. That is a thing that happens in a game of Warhammer. Now, I countered that by killing 9 units in my turn, but we don't need to worry about that part. And sure enough, after practicing the matchup, it only got better. So once I figured out the pace, it's like, now that I have figured out the pace, I can go play this at WTC and 20-0.
Yep. They have a lot of poor matchups. Basically, anything that is reasonably durable can cause them problems. I've experienced them bouncing off World Eaters. I'm sure they bounce off Deathwing Knights unless you walk just directly into their traps.
Yep.
They bounce off as anything with a defensive mechanic. So that would be Bulgrin. That would be anything that is high toughness is a real issue, right? A lot of the time they're wounding on 5s with rerolls to wound, and it's like, oops, I just rolled a little bad, didn't kill the rhino.
Hate when that happens.
I've seen it plenty of times.
And then as soon as they run out of pain tokens, it's comical.
Oh, it's the army falls off a cliff the hardest I've ever seen if they run out of pain tokens. I have seen a lot of games with Drukhari, and in none of them did it look good. None of them looked great.
Yeah, I think I've played about 9 games into Drukhari in Pariah Nexus. Like, and I'm hunting down the games, and I've played against quite a few different people. I just don't see it.
I have played into it several times, and the only time the game was close was with an army that is not going to be ranked very high, and I did win that game. And it's just, I don't know. I think that they are just not great if a player shows up with a good list ready for action.
Yes.
And there has to be a good player with a good list ready for action, but then they just get shut out.
Yes. Once you figure out what they're doing, it's over.
Yep.
So I think we're putting them in C tier.
I agree.
Yeah.
100%. I don't think they're D tier.
No,
but that's,
they're not D for Drukhari.
Nope.
No D for Death Guard. No armies in D tier so far, but I don't believe that Drukhari compete well at the highest level.
Yes. I will say every single army on the tier list, or that will be added to the tier list, I have seen a moment with them where I'm like, oh, the army's not great, or it is good, and go, but that thing they're doing right there, that's really good.
Yep.
Haven't seen that for Drukhari. Every time Drukhari whip out their coolest, most awesomest katana and are going to cut their opponent in half, it just shatters. And I've just seen that happen way too many times to put them higher than C tier.
Yeah, no, you do have to be respectful of Drukhari. I think they punched down better than any army in the game.
Yeah.
But we're not ranking them on how well they punch down.
Yeah.
That's just not the criteria being used here.
Yeah, if you want to go pub stomping or whatever, you can definitely take Drukhari and it'll be a fun time. But even there, like we've seen a lot of the time, they're vulnerable to just slight swings of dice as well.
Yep.
Overwatch is the bane of their entire existence. Yes, they have that one enhancement that can sometimes get around if they disembark from a transport. They're also very vulnerable to having their gigantic transports get picked off because then they don't have a detachment rule anymore. The joke that we have is, in this game, I'm just going to give the Drukhari player their old detachment rule back.
Yep.
Which is just kill their transports. Now they don't have one.
Yep. Yep.
Their units are huge. Like a Venom sticks way out. It's like super big, and it's hard to hide.
It's not that hard to cut a line on a Raider or a Venom. If you need to shoot it, you can often find a way.
I have killed Raiders and Venoms with some embarrassing units. I had a Kellermorph snipe a Venom from 5 wounds to dead.
Shouldn't happen, but like not the craziest story I've heard today.
Yeah, what's the average number of Kellermorphs it takes to kill a Venom? Probably 2.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
Yep.
If you get a line to those things, they're just gone.
Yeah. Like 3 Kellermorphs has a 0% chance to kill a Rhino, or close enough that I don't care.
Yeah.
But like 2 kills a Venom. Okay.
Sick. Love that.
Yeah. Or just like every time I activate a Tyranid army.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, 4 monsters shoot, 4 transports down. What is your rule now?
Yep. And you just don't have one.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
And if you're always perfectly able to keep your units 100% safe and activate them perfectly, then you'll win any game.
Then it's
with 40K.
very good. Then it's very good when it does that. Or when your opponent doesn't realize what's coming.
Yep.
Bad days, but
if you have to assume your opponent is as good as you are, and when they are, you get edges and find units that they weren't expecting and hit them, and they do the same to you. And when that happens, your units just disintegrate.
Yeah. Whew. All right. Let's move away from these Drukhari, but we're leaving them where they are, and let's move on to the next army on the list. Space Marines. This is Codex Space Marines. So we are ranking when you take a chapter that does not have its own book or index. So when you're not playing Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Templars, surely I cannot think of another Space Marine chapter that would be there. Anyways, we'll raid Imperial Agents later. This is what we're ranking right now. Yeah, I'm sorry, Deathwatch players. You deserve better. I deserve better.
I'm sorry, what players?
Black Xenoforce Imperial Agents players.
Yes.
This is Space Marines. Space Marines asterisk are theoretically the worst army in the game. That's fake.
That's fake. Are we talking Space Marines, no unique units, no unique detachments?
Not taking the 4 chapters.
Right, the ones that actually exist.
Here's my take on where Space Marines actually are. Because you can just take the 7 Space Marine detachments and put your choice of Sanguinary Guard, Thunder, Cav, Grimaldus, Hellbrick, Deathwing Knights in, with the only downside of specifically not getting to take Marneus Calgar. That's the only downside.
Yes.
At that point, competitively, it does not make a lot of sense to play pure Space Marines. So I think that the numbers you get for Space Marines are players who want to play Codex Space Marines and are not trying to optimize their list as hard as possible.
Yes.
And when you take players who are just not prioritizing the finely tuned competitive aspect of the game, a very legitimate way to enjoy the hobby, but for the purpose of win rates, maybe not the most representative.
No.
So, because every like good result that Space Marines would get gets shuffled into Dark Angels because the player who was trying to win the tournament decided that instead of taking Vulcan Heston, they're going to take Azrael.
And Azrael is bananas.
He is better than Vulcan Heston.
He so certainly is.
If you're going to take one named character, instead, like there's just no reason to take Corsaro Khan when a Ragnar exists.
I'm going to propose the same change that I proposed for a while, so you know I don't have an inside track here. What I think they should do to fix this problem is they should give the unique chapters in the book a small little rule to give them a niche, something that they do better or unique to them.
Yep.
So White Scars could get, their bikes get +1 damage on the charge, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
They get advance in charge on units with jump packs.
I think you tie it to the characters. So you may remember in 7th edition, Corsaro Khan gave Scout to bikes and dedicated transports.
Yeah.
And I think if Corsaro Khan did that now, if you take Khan, every transport in your army gains Scout 6.
Yes.
If you take, does Pedro Cantor? I think Pedro Cantor still has rules.
I believe he has rules, but
If you
could
take
not 100% guarantee
Cantor,
that.
you reroll 1s to wound against the oath target. If you take, just go down the line.
Yeah, so
Give
you
them
have
all
a reason.
Just buff the characters.
You don't need necessarily to make them great or the best. You just need them to have a reason to exist.
Yeah.
And currently they don't. Now, moving on from that, I think the Codex is
fine.
Yeah. What's the best best Codex compliant chapter is it's definitely Ultramarines, and it's probably the Ultramarines Vanguard.
Yeah, because that's the only one that has a reason to be. Bluntly, I think Ultramarine Gladius is a pretty good list. Objectively, I will just take it as Dark Angels, because Dark Angels is the same detachment, same units, but I get a better unit.
Yeah, I believe that any non-Codex compliant chapter can make a better Gladius than Ultramarines because they just have more options.
Yeah. Like, is Calgar better than every Space Wolf datasheet? Probably not. Every Blood Angel datasheet? Probably not. I would take Calgar over Dante, but wouldn't take it over all of over Dante and Mephiston and this and that. Like, it just doesn't stack up, unfortunately. So even though I think that's why the Space Marine win rate is as low as it is, I don't believe that's representative of how good Space Marines actually are. It's just that when you want to optimize Space Marines, you stop becoming sorted by Space Marines.
Yeah, you self-select into a different pool.
Yeah.
Yep. And people love their salamanders, but if you make a salamanders army, you are leaving money on the table. Mm-hmm. You're just giving up value.
Yep.
And that is what it is until they decide that they want to fix it. Which I don't know if they even think it's a problem.
Yeah,
We've
hard to tell.
No indication of that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think Space Marines in teams should be able to take 2 copies of Space Marines as long as you don't overlap anything. But that is a completely different tangent.
Yeah, kind of cool.
It would be kind of cool. Don't overlap detachments or units. That would be my suggestion, but I don't make those calls.
Yeah. So where are we actually going to put the Space Marines here? I'm just thinking B tier. I just think it's a solid army.
It's fine. It'll probably go bottom of B tier when all is said and done.
That I would expect it to be in the lower end of B tier, yeah. So Codex Space Marines, better than they look, but they are just hampered by the direct comparisons that exist next to them. Because, would you rather have, is Calgar better than Helbrecht? Maybe. Is Calgar better than Helbrecht and his 10 extra data sheets that you give? Nope. He's not.
But what only benefits from comparisons to other things? Our wonderful sponsor, Rattlecan Studios.
Indeed. Let's roll it.
All right, and we're back.
We're back. So let's get into the next one, shall we?
Absolutely. We got Grey Knights. This is one that is near and dear to my heart. I took this to WTC a year ago, and I'm taking them to Crucible in 3 days. 3 days. I think this army is really good, legitimately. I think it's really solid. I think there's 2 different builds that you can go for. Both of them are pretty good. You got the Nemesis Dread Knight, variation where you take 6 Dread Knights and then you take something to support that, whether that's Canis, Rex, or a 10-man Terminator or Paladin unit with either Drago or Grandmaster with a Sigil, blah, blah, blah. That's the build, right? 6 Dread Knights and then some stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Even though there's it's just it feels like Grey Knight's a sliding scale, but it feels like you can be viable on any side of that sliding scale. Where you take the 6 Dread Knight on the left, or you slide it all the way down to 0. Like we saw, I know you quite like 0 Dread Knights.
I actually really like 0 Dread Knights. I think it's gotten better lately.
Yep. And it's funny because I think that you can make a case for the best Grey Knight list being almost anywhere on that scale.
For sure.
We've seen 6 Dread Knights do well. We've seen 0 Dread Knights do well. I've seen 2 Dread Knights do well. I've seen 4 Dread Knights do well.
I think
1's the wrong number.
With the points changes to Dread Knights, I personally have found it a lot harder to hybridize. It used to be you could take a really good hybrid list with 4 Dread Knights and two Terminator bricks. Yeah. You can't do that anymore. It's now 3 and 2, and that's just it's kind of icky. But yes, you can land on the scale, though hybridizing them has gotten harder. I do think that the 3 Terminator brick list is much better than it was in the past because the state of the game has come down around it, right? It was a decent enough list, in my opinion, way back when Aeldari was, running the table with stupid Wraith Knights that could overwatch you to death or whatever. And back then, Grey Knights were eking out their little niche. They were just, 30 Terminators scoring points and doing things. And I think the game has come down enough around it that I think 30 Terminators is a really good list right now. And I think 6 Dread Knights is a really good list. And as you said, you can hybridize in the middle of that.
Yep.
Really annoying to deal with the army. Mists of Deimos is an insane stratagem. And you can Mists a 10-man Terminator into Rapid Ingress somewhere else, into Charge, into Kill something, tie up. And then if they fall back, you Mists and Rapid somewhere else. And you just keep the cycle
Mists
going.
genuinely might be the best stratagem in the game.
Very well might. Very, very well might.
It's the best attachment one, honestly.
And people just aren't that good at killing that many 2-up Armor of Contempt bodies anymore. Used to be a lot better at it. They are now a lot less good. And that means that with the super high OC, the combat that used to not hold up a year ago actually is really powerful now.
Yep.
Right? 4 attacks at 622 is not that great in the past, but now it's actually pretty damn solid, especially if you can ignore modifiers.
Yep.
Which you can do en masse if you feel like it. So it's I think the army is actually really good, and it's really good in good hands. It's good in teams. It's good in singles. I think it just falls neatly into that A tier for me right now. And I will be taking the army to Crucible. We have a game going live against Thousand Suns in 2 days. The list performed really well there, and I'm excited to get more games with it for sure. I do think it's better than Eldar, but less good than Guard if we want to slot it in right there.
Yeah, I think slotted it right in there is a fine place to be. I agree with you on Grey Knights in A tier. They just feel well positioned for most things right now. In teams, it has a bit of a different role than it has in some other places. But it's good in teams, it's good in singles, it's good at different things. It has surprising diversity for the 3 plastic kits that exist.
It's kind of crazy, right?
It's crazy that we can look and say this army with 5 kits has no diversity, but Grey Knights, you kind of do have a little bit of a slider you can work, and you get good results on either end.
Now, 30 Grey Knight Terminators does not play the way it sounds like it plays. It's a very teleport, pick your battle kind of moment, kind of army, but it is very solid right now, and high OC, difficult to actually bring your weapons that can kill Terminators to bear on the Terminators.
It is tricky, yeah.
It's very tricky. People always say, oh yeah, I can kill Terminators, and then they never get the engagements they want, and they get picked away, and it's a real problem. I think it's just a really, really good army, But you know what else is really, really good?
I think what's really, really good is the 50 Art of War memberships that have been gifted by Chapter Master Kamal Toa.
That's right. Thank you, John.
Absolutely. Chapter Master Camel Toe, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to us. If you are one of those 50 lucky individuals who is watching and happen to be gifted a membership, make sure that you go ahead and accept that. But we really, really appreciate your support. It does wonders for the channel, and you are a absolute hero of the chapter.
Absolutely. And if you want to peek behind the curtain, I believe that is John McCardle behind the wheel there. So we appreciate your support.
It's Chapter Master Kamal.
He knows many faces.
I see.
John. He knows many faces. Now, for anything that is not McCardle related, we're going to be saving our super chats till the end, but we definitely wanted to call out the Chapter Master and honor his great deeds.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Let's, so Grey Knights going into A tier.
Going into A tier?
Yep.
Just right above Eldar, right in there, slotting neatly in.
All right. And let's then move on to the next one up. So after Grey Knights, we're moving into the Genestealer Cults, previously alone in D tier. But, they actually got the stealth buff, where they got that little like reinforcement change in an FAQ after Pariah Nexus came out.
It actually helps a lot, especially with Biosanctum.
It helped. It helps, yeah.
When I played my game into Nick, I actually didn't ever, I probably should have technically, but I didn't ever put out blips. Because anytime a unit came back, it just deep struck immediately and went for like 7-inch charges. So I never put out a blip because screw it, what am I going to do that for? And that is actually a pretty big deal because you can lose a unit, it shows right back up and charges you out of reserves. And some armies, i.e. Biosanctic Brood Surge, are actually really good at charging out of reserves. Better than most, anyway. You can also build a really high scoring list. I believe that is what Innis took recently. And I think the army is not, it has some problems. The biggest problem is it has no units that can take a punch, period. Aberrants can take a slap, but they can't take a punch. No. And that's the real issue there. No units that can take a punch means that you do have problems in the Dark Eldar vein of not being able to take a punch. Dark Eldar can't take a slap, so if you're looking at the metrics
there's an order here.
Yeah. I definitely think you can do a lot more with GSC than it appeared when the Codex first came out. I'm having fun playing them.
Yep.
I have had some great games with them. And I do think they struggle into certain archetypes. They struggle into things that can resist a lot of damage. They struggle into things that can hunt them down.
All true, yeah.
But other than that, they're not in D tier. That much is for certain.
No, they have been promoted at a minimum.
Yep, and they're not the worst army in the game.
And I still think GSC has a lot of problems, and even though you can make them play, and a phenomenal player like Innis can win a tournament with them, I think the reality is that almost every army in the game has that you can win a tournament with it going on right now.
Yes, and unfortunately, Innis is not the person to prove that because Innis always does well.
Yep.
Eric Lathuris, I believe, also won an event down in Australia, or at least did really well.
That sounds right.
I believe he won a large event. And Eric Lathuris also always does well.
Yep, very good player.
But what you can see is that it has tools to let a good player do interesting things, which is, you must be this tall to ride.
Yeah.
Right? And every army in the game can basically pass you are this tall to ride if a good player is playing you.
Yeah, which is nice. Still, we got to put them somewhere on the list. And so I think we're putting them in GSC tier.
GSC tier, for
there
sure.
You go.
I would probably say between that there Death Guard and that there Drukhari.
Yeah, probably right in that ballpark.
Yeah.
I think so. So slapping it right there. It feels right. They've gotten some more play options. I think that they're another army that is similar to Drukhari. Better if you don't know what's going down.
For sure.
And so I could see armies that are significantly higher than GSC in the tier list losing to GSC on that first try and being like, oh, I didn't realize this was the kind of Warhammer we were playing, and now you have more points than me.
I feel fairly confident that if I were to play Nick again and he were playing the Eaters, I would have a substantially harder time. But he got the one game, not best 2 of 3.
Yep. Yeah, that's a real thing, though.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
when you get to that point with an army, I always struggle to rate it too highly because I assume that the top players have gotten the practice in.
Yes.
And that's a real thing. So I'm curious to see how the army develops. I could very well see it getting some buffs and then becoming a properly real good army.
I'm excited for it.
But I'm excited to see that. But for now, I think that's where they go.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I've had fun with them. They felt like they had things that made them good.
Yeah.
And things that held them back, but things that made them good that you could properly leverage in your games. And that felt awesome.
And I'm curious to see you continue to play games with them. Truthfully,
Absolutely.
I want to see more out of GSC.
I want to get them back on the schedule.
Maybe I'll get to play against your GSC sometime.
That'd be fun.
All right.
That'd be fun.
So off the Genestealer Cult, on to the next. It's big, it's tall, it's not covered in spikes. It's Imperial Knights. So the old Imperial Knights got the exact same buff as Chaos Knights in the last balance update, but Imperial Knights actually have a reason to take a big knight.
They do things.
Yeah, because their big knights do things and their little knights don't. So, just the complete opposite of Chaos Knights, really.
If you think about it.
And so they got a slightly more impactful value from the same buff that you got, which is that ability to walk through walls, a thing that Imperial Knights previously were completely confounded by. Just could not process how to get from point A to point B without, walking around and taking a break at a gas station. But now they're better. Like they got a little bit cheaper a bit ago. They got a good rules buff. They weren't very high up on the tier list before. They're still, I think, merely I8.
Yeah. They don't have a lot of tools.
Yep.
I think that the tools that they do have, which Chaos Knights do not have, CK don't have, is compensated by the fact that they have like 4 units and Chaos Knights have like 10. So I think that the levers there for a good player are pretty much the same on both, which is not a lot, not a ton, but they definitely, moving through walls definitely gives them a new lease on life. I think they were flirting with worst army in the game for a while. And I don't think they are, but they're definitely not doing awesome.
Yeah, they still very much run into the stat check problem. I think the reality is that when you're a vehicle stat check, it's actually less about the player expression because neither army between Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights actually player expresses that well. It's just that one of them is, I think, a slightly better stat check. And so I think they're going to end up in the same letter as Chaos Knights. I think that the Knights with Silent C are falling into C tier.
Yes. Do you think they are just above or just below CK?
Just above.
Just above.
Honestly. I think because the big knights are actually useful in Imperial Knights, you get more value out of the towering and being different and shooting and I just think, and you also have Imperial Agents instead of Chaos Demons.
Yeah, Imperial Agents are definitely better.
That is important.
Listen, subductors, 170 points for 22 subductors to hold your backfield is legitimate.
Yep. And I think that actually helps a lot. And so I think that it puts Imperial Knights ahead of Chaos Knights because I think they have better side options to drag in. And then I think I would rather be the stat check that is shooting harder and can see over the terrain than the stat check that is more dudes right now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, I look at the two of them and I say, which am I more scared of? And the answer is neither. But between the two of them, it's probably Imperial Knights because Imperial Knights, if you mess up, can shoot your face off your body.
Yep.
And that at least helps, right? Chaos Knights, it's going to take a little bit. They can overwhelm certain areas of the board, which is nice. But I'm definitely a lot more concerned by oops-a-daisy, teleport knight got line of sight to my unit. It's now gone.
Yep.
Than I am about like maybe a couple brigands are going to get line of sight to me if I mess up.
Yeah. Also, you know what? You get a reroll in there every once in a while.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which matters.
A
reroll, a hit, and a wound is huge.
As a 2-shot melt-a-gun enjoyer, getting some rerolls in there does make me feel better.
Yes.
A lot. So, I want
again, Imperial Agents is just a lot better than Chaos Demons right now. Because Chaos Demons are still... As an ally.
Yeah, we can't spoil the S tier agents yet. They don't know.
Of course not. It needs to be a surprise. But yeah, the problem is demons as an ally are currently laboring under the restriction of having to take a battle line per other unit.
Yeah, Nurgling per Nurgle unit you add, yeah.
But like the other Nurgle units aren't that good.
Yeah,
right?
I like a Beast of Nurgle and that Herald guy, but I don't like them that much.
Listen, if Nurglings were Zerglings,
Yeah.
and they were Tzeentch instead of Nurgle somehow,
Maybe.
then I think it would actually be pretty damn good, because you take 2 or 3 of those and you take a bunch of the lone ops, right? If there were Slunurglings,
Ooh.
right, and you could take, Selesky, not
You like her,
Shalaxi.
yeah.
If you could take Selesky and Slunurglings and the Changeling, the Blue Scribes, and some Tzerglings, then I think you'd be fine, but you can't. Yeah. And so if you want to take a cheap battle line, you get Nurgle, which all the rest of them suck as an ally. And if you take an expensive battle line, you're taking an expensive battle line.
I'm at the point in my life, by the way, where I'm actually taking Demonettes on my Chaos Knight list.
That's not where you want to be.
Sleemanets.
Sleemanets?
Yeah. Yeah, it's rough out there, man. Don't judge until you've walked a mile in my war dog.
I do not want to walk a while in your war dog. Point is, I want to take Subductors without also having to take their brothers' Beductors.
Yep, I would like that as well.
All right.
All right. That tangent has outlived itself. So Imperial Knights just ahead of Chaos Knights. Combination of, I think I'd rather stat check by being the big shooty boys than the lots of boys. And I think I'd rather have agents as an ally than demons as an ally. And that keeps them in the same letter, but a little bit higher.
Absolutely.
All right.
Distinctions, sometimes without a difference.
Well, let's keep rolling some whole spam, shall we?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Leagues of Votann.
Yeah. I like Votann.
I think they're decent.
They got the stealth buff of getting that really cool data sheet that's free. It's crazy.
The Jaegers.
Yeah. As soon as they just made it cost so little so that you don't feel as bad about paying $300 per 10 or whatever eBay's doing. It's not actually 300. It's just more than it should be.
It might be.
Surely not.
Soon.
I haven't checked.
Yeah, I thought about triggering people by saying Jaegers, but I thought better about it.
And then you decided to anyways.
Well, now they know I don't mean it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So we've got
That'll make it better.
Leagues of Votann, which are honestly they're just like the solid army. They're like the definition of just cool.
Yeah, to me they feel like the midpoint of the tier list. Like they just feel like a solid army, doesn't do anything particularly amazing, but it doesn't do anything particularly poorly.
I think you could bounce the game around Votann. Like
I feel like the game currently is balanced around Votann, to be honest with you. It's just a solid army. It scouts, but not too aggressively.
It infiltrates and it doesn't pay points for it. That part's nice, but it doesn't, like, once it's done with the scout move turn, it is a very, I am on the table playing Warhammer 40,000.
Yes, it is very fair. Like, incredibly fair. Yeah. Like, at the start of the game, they go, hey, those units, I'm good into those units.
Yeah, and then you play Warhammer.
And then after that, you get to choose. Do you want to be on an objective and let them treat you as being +1 judgment token? Do you want to kill their units and get judgment tokens?
How could you?
Up to you. And that's very fair. Very fair 40K.
We know where the fair army's going, right?
Oh, it's cleanly in the bear tier.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
B tier for Votann. I like Votann. I don't think they need really any buffs. I don't think they need any nerfs. I think they're in a solid place. Good players can do well with them. They do not dominate the meta. They can be a little bit of a coin flippy army on, like, going first and going second Votann are two different factions as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, going second one definitely does not have, the long end of the stick. Yep. I'll tell you that. They have a lot of scout, which is pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
They are in chat, they're the world's most okay army.
Yeah, and that's not a bad place to be.
I would probably say that you can drag Black Templars up to just above them, but I definitely feel like they're better than Chaos Demons, generic Codex Marines, whatever that means, and anything down below in C tier for sure.
Yeah, we'll sort out that order at some point here, but yeah, that just looks about right now. Votann, they are doing the same thing as before. They just have an infiltrating unit to stop you from shutting down their game plan, so they get to use their game plan more often. It's still a little first turn dependent. It still shoots very hard into the right targets, and that means that it's better than its rank into elite armies.
Yeah, and it's pretty good into Black Tide, for example, because you just get +1 to hit and wound into the units that matter, and then you just shoot them. Land forts are a little undercosted, but not by enough that it means that they go crazy.
Yeah. I did get to watch Team England's Votann get 20-0'd by that Black Tide. That was fun.
Cool. I did watch Richard into Black Tide stack a pile of bodies on that table that reached probably about this high, like a solid, 6 to 8 inches off the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine a game of 40k happened, and Olivier is really good.
Yeah, he do be good at that.
He do be good at 40k, which helps him a lot. Yeah, I think Votann are just fine. Something I will say about them is that you might think, oh my god, you're dead now. I got +1 to hit and wound on you. What I've found with Votann units is +1 to hit and wound just gets them to where they should have been.
Yeah, when you get hit by that no judgment token life, it is wild.
Yeah.
I have this trick I do with Tyranids when I play against Votann. I deploy my Maleceptors on the line.
Right.
And then they get judgment tokened. And then the Maleceptors stay behind walls, and I walk Exocrines forward.
And whether or not they kill them is...
They don't.
They just don't.
They don't. Because the Exocrines
Yeah.
don't kill the Votann units. They just wound them. And then the Exocrines are just like walking forward, not on objectives, vaguely in cover, often with a 5-up feeling of pain. And then the entire Votann army is like scratching their head looking at it like, oh, really thought you were going to be a Maleceptor. I'm like, yeah, it's just an Exocrine. There's not even an invuln on this guy.
Yeah.
Just a dude.
I think I played a game where they assumed Angron would kill something before they got to shoot at it. And so they didn't mark Angron.
Oh, no.
And then Angron did kill something. And then without +1 to wound, they just super bounced off him.
That could happen, yeah.
Turbo bounced. The army is a little high variance because when you shoot, a lot of their guns are called casino cannons, and for good reason.
Yeah.
I have seen 2 shots, 8 hits on the laser off of the Sagittar. And I've seen 2 shots, 0 hits.
More often than the 8 hits.
You're right. More often than the 8 hits. The average, I think, number of hits is 2 shots, 2 hits.
Close enough, yeah. But
But
the way that you got there.
it can be anywhere between 0 and 8, and you just roll 6 of them, and you can get 3 hits on 6 transports.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Look, I've lost monsters on Overwatch after getting shot by the entire army.
Yes.
It's just,
Yep.
you figure it out together.
Because everything is sustained, and everything is sustained like D3,
And there aren't rerolls.
and there aren't rerolls. So you just roll them and you find out.
Good for Votann.
They can also bear down and kill big things because they can give like sustained hits to a unit of their Terminator
Against
boys
the
with
judgment
like,
token thing.
and they are decent in melee, not amazing at it. Yeah, I think they just slot
B tier.
right into the middle of the list, and I think that's how that goes.
Shall we move on to the next?
Absolutely.
This army keeps coming back. Necrons.
I keep killing it, and it's still here.
That's what GW must be saying. They're like, man, we keep nerfing them, and they are still, I don't know, pretty good.
Yeah,
Like,
Still pretty solid.
Necrons are putting together event wins. They are doing pretty well in teams events. They are doing pretty well in singles events. They aren't dominating either aspect of Warhammer, but they are doing firmly well at both.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty strong. They have a number of different viable builds.
Yeah.
Hypercrypt is really good and extremely good in teams, to be quite honest with
they
you.
have like Hypercrypt with Catan. Then they have other things like Hypercrypt without Catan. Then Hypercrypt with Monolith and Hypercrypt without Monolith.
All of them are really good.
Yeah.
They can take the Silent King or not. And if they take the Silent King, their army's matchups shift dramatically, and it's also really good. And then if they don't take the Silent King, suddenly they have a ton of extra stuff. And that's just Hypercrypt. Honestly, Necrons feel pretty well written as a codex.
Yeah.
Once you nerf it.
Once you nerf it twice, they feel pretty well written.
Because you can also get Awakened Dynasty. You can do Awakened
solid.
Dynasty with Wraiths. You can do Awakened Dynasty with MSU. You can do Awakened Dynasty with Big Bricks of Warriors. You can do, there's like 3 or 4 detachments that are just complete garbage.
I think there's only 2 that are complete garbage. There's only 5 in the codex.
Oh, there's only 5? Then there's 2 that are complete garbage.
Yeah, there's 2 that are just not really getting rated here.
And Canoptic Court, still pretty solid. Doomstalkers in Canoptic Court are still really good. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of room here to write a good list for singles, for teams, for whatever.
Yep.
And that's pretty neat. And you can go skewy in a lot of different directions. You can go Hypercrypt that goes very heavy guns and Hypercrypt that goes heavy into Catan, and they play 100% differently.
Yeah. It is impressive that you have so many different play styles, I think, for the Necrons right now.
Yeah.
Because I think there's 2 detachments that are like good. Then you have Canoptic Court as like this isn't bad. It's like still solid. It's not great.
So solid.
But then you have a good amount of diversity of lists, and especially its archetypes. It's not like it's, would I like to take Leman Russ or Dorns?
Yeah, same thing, different skin.
Yeah, no, it's not that. It's would you like to take the reanimating warrior blob or the ultra hard to kill monster mash? Or would you like to take all combat or all shooting? Those are like the 4 archetypes that I see.
Yeah, and the Silent King is like a modifier. You can just be like, yeah, it's all shooting with the Silent King. And then you have completely different matchup tables. You now wreck anything that tries to come at you with a modifier of any kind, right? And then Catan it's a very well internally balanced, not like detachment versus detachment, but unit versus unit. Because all the units can earn their place. A lot of their, like, heavy destroyers are really good. You can see a teleporting blob within Mythic Exterminators that just blasts people across the tabletop if you're not ready for it.
Yep.
You can see spam of the Gauss cannons on the heavy destroyers, which do a lot of damage into vehicles and that sort of thing. You can take, the Scorpex are really good. You have a Scorpec Lord with 3 Scorpex. You can do 6 Scorpex if you feel like spending the big points.
Yeah.
But they do decent damage in combat. They're decently durable. You can make them really durable and less damage, or more damage and not that durable.
Yeah, I generally like where Necrons are at. I do think that they still are not at the top of the pile.
No.
Because as much as they do a lot of things, they have a lot of different options. I don't think any of those options are great into the stuff that's going to end up above them. Where I've seen Necrons drop off into the other top armies a little too often for me.
I could see that. High damage output does tend to be a bit of a damper for them, although sometimes Catan can just tank through it, and shooting can jump around it, but still. I personally, you can let me know what you think that there's somewhere around either directly above or directly below Grey Knights.
Yeah, I think I would go like right below.
Right below. I
think
tend to
in
agree
A
with that.
tier, probably not the top end of A tier, if we're being honest, but still, I think a firmly good army right now.
Absolutely. I think Necrons are just in a really good place.
Yeah, and they're a good army that I don't think really requires any nerfs. You could go 5 points up on a couple things. You could go 5 points down on a couple things, but like just a good army.
Yeah,
just a solid army, and I think just a little bit on the right side of the line compared to something like Votann.
It's not even remotely going to hold you back. If you do well with it, you did well under your own power. I think it's in a great place.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on from the Necrons, we've got our next Xenos army here. Let's move into the Orks.
The Orks.
Swag.
Yeah, Orks are in an interesting place for sure right now. I think I was pleasantly surprised the last couple times I played them.
Yeah.
Right? The last couple times I played them, I was a little bit down on them. Then I played them and they performed really well. They clicked perfectly. It felt awesome. I don't think that's consistent. And Orks as an army, more than Votann, suffers from the go firsts versus the go seconds.
True.
In that when you go first, the army is just way different to when you go second. WA needs, they probably won't do it, but it needs to change to start of your command phase. Like it just has to. The difference between first versus second is so stark that it definitely hurts the book for sure. I have gone second and still performed well with them, but it is much harder. They have decent damage output. They have some units that I wasn't giving like proper credit that can do a lot of damage. Unit of 10 Beast Snagga Boys with a Beast Boss in it is only 185 and hits incredibly hard. I think Warhorde is the way to go, personally. I know some people have taken some other variations on Orks, but if I were to play it, I would definitely take the Warhorde. And you can make a lot of units hit really hard. You can make Knobs hit really hard coming out of a transport. You can make the Beast combination hit pretty decently hard. Squighog Riders are pretty good, especially in those little 4-mans. 160 for a 4-man.
Yeah.
It's pretty tanky, hits pretty hard. they've performed really well for me. And finally, Flash Gits. Flash Gits are still great, man. Yeah. They lost Badrock. I don't even know him, hardly even knew him. And then, but like they lost that, but then Flash Gits are 160 for 10.
Not that expensive.
It's not that expensive, and you can just pour bullets downfield. And sure, the bullets each individually kind of suck. They hit on a 5 with sustained, but you can put a lot of damage downfield. We saw Kill Rigs doing well recently, and Kill Rigs rules are actually pretty stacked. Honestly, if you look at them, like if I were to play it on the table right now, like if you were to, twist my arm and say, Jack, you put an orc list on the table right now, what is it? It would involve 3 Kill Rigs with 30 Beast Snagga Boys and 3 Beast Bosses, for sure. The lethal hits you can hand out, the +1 strength that can stack, allows you to get over the top of a lot of stat checks that your opponent hands out. Not all of them, looking at you, Dark Angels, or Grey Knights. Grey Knights are also really bad. Anything that's a 2-up with Armor Contempt is, it's not great. But other than that, and if you take the Beast Bosses, honestly, you can probably put away some amount of Grey Knights. I still wouldn't bet on them. I wouldn't bet on the Orcs there, but you at least helps you. Yep. You can do a lot of things if your opponent doesn't have a 2-up with Armor Contempt.
Yep. What I find my trouble with Orcs is the consistency with which they do those things. Because sometimes you do find those hard matchups. And then other times you have a matchup that could go well, but you go second and get shot.
Yeah, long range shooting is not as prevalent as it was maybe 6 months ago. But you can still run into Tau on the wrong table and go second, and it's Jover. It's bad. Admech is also a poor army to go second into.
Yep.
But if you go first, they also don't have a great time. So there is a lot of variance issues with Orcs right now. A lot of go first versus go second, which is an issue. Yeah. It's honestly, it's the single biggest issue. If Orcs always went first, they'd be an A tier, no questions asked.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But like the fact that
the Orcs I play against,
and that is an issue. It's a real bad one, honestly, is consistency. Yep. But they do have the juice. Like the units are good. The strats and detachment is good, which can carry you through going second into the wrong army sometimes. But you do have to outplay your opponent in that exact scenario. Yeah. And to me, I've been impressed with how they've done when I played them. I've been impressed with the tools that they have had. So for me, that's going to place them probably just below Votann for me.
Yeah. I honestly, I'm a little inclined to go lower. I honestly see Orcs as like the higher end of C, but I don't personally play with Orcs. I just find that their inconsistencies to be really a hard thing to overcome because the problems are just out of your control. And to me, that sounds similar to the Custodes Knight situations.
Not to the same extent. So it's not quite the same issue. Sometimes you come into a matchup and you go second and it's not great. But you at least still have speed and you still have quantity of units, which can help you get through it. Whereas Custodes generally have like 4 units and they're kind of slow and they kind of walk up the board and don't do that much.
That's how I feel about Orcs. Is that sometimes like they don't have the WOG and they're slowly walking up the board, except they're walking up the board without a 2-up armor save.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay placing them lower. Last couple times I played them, I was very impressed with the units that they had and how well they performed.
You're the one who's actually played the army, to be fair. I have played against Orcs. I have not played with Orcs, ever. Actually, I think I've played one game in 7th edition with Orcs. Other than that, I play against them.
I mean, they have done pretty well, consistently. They did well at. There were some asterisks on it. But they did well at what event was it? I forget the
U.S. Open Tacoma.
They did well at the U.S. Open Tacoma.
Yes,
there were asterisks, but the games on stream were clean. Or at least the last several. I didn't watch it. Okay. But the point is, the list has the capability to do that in individual games. And for me, that means that I don't want to rank it in C tier because I don't see a lot of those armies having that capability.
Fair enough.
Yes. I would put them, I mean, I'm okay to put them lower than demons there. I'm okay to put them below demons in the lower half of B, but I do think the army has a capability that we do need to...
Okay, yeah. Then let's put it below the demons then.
Yes.
All right. So that means B tier, of course.
Yes.
So B tier for the Borks.
B tier for the Borks. I don't think they're in C tier, and I think they still have a decent amount of things they can do. But being bottom of B tier definitely does place them in the bottom half of armies. So, it is that.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. Well, I've had enough of these B and C discussions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about something a little bit better. Adeptus Sororitas. Previously an A tier.
Yeah, no, this army is cracked. I mean, straight up, I'm just going to say it. This army's busted.
Yeah, this army real good.
They do it
especially in singles.
Especially in singles, but it's also just a weapon in teams.
Yeah.
Because it can just kill you. Like, it's so fast.
Yep.
And it shoots so hard. And it is durable enough that if you go to crack it, you oftentimes bounce off and get shredded. If you hit it multiple times, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
But you're not going to.
If you can catch them right, it's not a perfect army because it doesn't have and we're talking Bringers of Flame here, by the way.
Yes.
I'm well aware that there are other options. But we're talking Bringers of Flame here because Bringers of Flame definitely feels like the best way to play Sisters. It has gotten by far the highest results and seen the most play.
Yes.
Everyone, it was funny because a WTC, you're always expecting to see the secret tech and things. And then you get to all the different Sisters lists, all the different Bringers of Flame lists, and they're all the same darn thing.
Yes.
Because that archetype just is good. You take Immolators, you put Dominions inside. You take Castigators, you shoot people until they're dead. If you're feeling spicy, you take up some Paragon Warsuits, or you just take more of the good things. Those are the options.
The Volgons are one of the most egregious units I've ever been hit by.
Getting hit by Volgons is unfun. Hitting them can be fun.
It can be, but I've also experienced it just my opponent going, hey, my Triumph this turn is going to go double Miracle Dice 6 up Feel No Pain. And, hey, look at that. Armor of Contempt and pass some saves, and I lost one Paragon, now die.
Yep.
And I've seen that. It's happened to me. I have watched it happen way too many times to discount it. And, I would say Bringers of Flame Sisters best army in the game right now. Yeah, for sure.
So I would put it at the top of that tier for sure.
For sure.
I mean, it goes very fast, shoots very hard, has reliability built in.
Yep.
And even with the points changes, that is not a bad army.
Absolutely.
S tier for Sisters.
And I want to just give a brief little aside to the absolute fire hose of Miracle Dice that just pours out of that army as the game goes on.
Yep.
They get a truly ridiculous amount of them.
Yep.
And sometimes they get to count them as 6s. Sometimes they get auto 6s. It's ridiculous. Quentin and I mathed it out, probably about average, napkin math, about 40 of them a game. And what happens is from about turn 3 on, every activation, positive and negative, gets stapled with a miracle die.
Yep.
Every single one. Oh, that shot that goes through, you have 4 wounds left? Yeah, you did. No roll required. You're dead. That Melta hit, but I need it to go through. It wounded. Guess what? Look at that. Every single one. Eldar, you have to pick and choose. You have to choose the right moment. It's a very good rule. Sisters, you just get to rattle them off like you're, making it rain at the club, but it's miracle dice.
It's a lot of them.
It's an absurd number.
Yep.
A crazy amount of miracle dice to the point where I've just seen, I've seen Nick or Quentin take a ruin, right? Or something.
Just fill it up.
Put it in the corner and put miracle dice on top of it. And they're just overflowing and spilling off.
Yes. My cup overfloweth with dice.
They have to find a second ruin to put all the dice on top of because they physically can't use them fast enough. It is actually ridiculous, especially if you start going, double miracle dice off of the Triumph. And then it's all right, so the Immolator hit, and all right, the first one wounded. I'm going to make the second one wound. First damage is 8. You're dead automatically. Guess what? Bye-bye. See ya.
Yeah, just a casual 10 plus d6 damage into the Rhino.
Automatically. Bye-bye.
It's pain.
It's
so much pain. I very much like Sisters, but it's a little bit too much right now. I want to see that output tone down a little bit. Really, I'd love to see just the quantity of Miracle Dice be a little lower. I got to choose.
One of the levers needs to change. The Miracle Dice need to slow down, or the army needs to move less blisteringly fast.
That part does make me sad.
Because having Castigators move 21 inches and shoot at full efficacy is bananas. Getting away from the Volgons, hard when they move 17.
Yep.
Like, because they move 8, and then they're +2 move from the Triumph, and then they advance 6 because they have 17 Miracle Dice overflowing, and one of them's guaranteed to be a 6 because they have the Triumph.
Sure, why
and
not?
then they're +1 to advance. And guess what? 17.
Yep.
And then they shoot you with +1 to hit and wound, full rerolls to hit and wound.
Yep, that's
the sound of you dying.
Yeah, no,
the
I've
record.
seen the Sisters go too fast and shoot too hard. I was there the first time we put this codex on our channel.
And he went too fast and shot too hard.
He went too fast and shot too hard.
And that's really where we're at. And then if that was all of it, sure. But then they also just... Dude, they just get so many Miracle Dice.
It's so many.
They get Miracle Dice for existing on objectives. They get Miracle Dice at the start of each turn. They get Miracle Dice at the start of the battle round, and that one's a 6. They get Miracle Dice anytime their units die. I guarantee you I'm forgetting something. And their units, by the way, are not that expensive.
The cherubs.
And then they get Miracle Dice when they use Miracle Dice. So it takes Miracle Dice to get Miracle Dice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have cherubs recycling. Like if you run the standard list, you have 6 cherubs in it.
Yeah.
Because you have 3 Dominion squads that split in half, and each half gets a cherub.
Okay.
So
You
have
get 15 dice for the 2 battle rounds and
the
Triumph.
and the
if she's
Triumph.
alive. Then you get 6 from cycling. So you've got 21.
And you
Then
get
every time something dies,
you get 1.
and then on a 4+ every time when you're on an objective with a simulacrum, which if you are trying to go that route, you probably get 1 or 2 objectives to roll for every turn, which will probably get you 3 or 4 more dice.
Yep.
So you're looking at like 20, high 20s plus your units that die.
Yep.
Right.
And there's a lot of cheap nonsense units in Sisters, right? Like if you kill a unit that's being led by a character, that's 2. If you kill the transport it rode in on, that's 3. And that's not that hard to do.
No.
But yeah, Quinn and I mathed out. It was the 21, the 6 from cycling, the 15 from the turns. Then if you
Vol
hold
might give
2
you 1 or
objective, Vol gives you what is like 1 or 2 a game.
Yeah.
And then that is, where are we at? We're at 21, 23.
Yeah.
Then if you stand on 2 objectives for the game, you get 1 on average a turn, and those are 4 up.
Higher end
So
of
that's-
20s, and then your units.
And
die.
then your unit's dying.
There you go. It's good. We think Sisters, at least for what we've rated so far, best army in the game.
Best army in the game. They are absolutely vicious.
Yeah.
If you're playing them defensively, they're good. If you are just taking them and moving them way too fast and shooting too hard and killing people in their deployment zone,
You hate when that happens.
they are
Hate to see it.
the best army in the game.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on from the Sisters battle. Let's talk about the Space Wolves.
Yeah, Space Wolves previously B tier, but they got a pretty big buff with their detachment.
Yep.
And they've also been doing pretty decent things with Stormlands.
Yep. And we theoretically saw a nerf when you couldn't duplicate the stratagems with Wolflord anymore. And that could theoretically be a Stormlands nerf. However, being honest, that nerf has not borne out in any significant way that I've seen.
No, I played the Stormlands recently, and I was like, whoa, jeez. And I've been playing Champions of Russ several times.
Yeah.
What they did with Champions of Russ is actually one of the best revamps of a detachment I've ever seen. One simple little change, and the army just works as opposed to not.
Yep.
You start with one of them unlocked, which is almost
that's
always Saga of the Warrior Born for sustained hits, because that also
start.
gets you advanced and charge from the strat, which then gives you the foot in the door to unlock other strats by going faster.
Yeah. I still think that Wolf Jail, the Stormlance, is the best way to play the army.
Probably. It's a little unbalanced in that sometimes you run into bad matchups, sometimes you don't, but it's brutal outside of the good matchups or the bad matchups.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Where like a lot of these armies that we've described that have some good matchups, some bad matchups, I think Space Wolves fall on the right end of the spectrum here, where they don't have that many bad matchups, and the flip is no longer like if I go first, we play a good game of Warhammer. It's now if I go first, it's over. And if I go second, we play a game of Warhammer.
Yeah, that's the kind of variance that you want if you're playing the army.
Yeah, if you're
and
gonna
you don't
take a
want if you're
coin
balancing a game.
Yep.
It is also like if you have a bad matchup into Stormlance, sorry, you have no hope.
Yes. The armies that cannot handle Stormlance cannot handle Stormlance. If you are not tall enough to ride the Thunderwolf, you get dragged.
Yeah, the Thunderwolf, they strap you to the back of their wolf and drag you along with it.
Yeah.
And that's, does not make a bad army, I'll tell you that.
Nope.
Now, yeah, they can have some bad matchups. They're particularly vulnerable to multiple damage to attacks in combat. They still have a 6-inch reactive move, which helps against that.
Yep.
And they are lightning fast, which means that they can jump from outside of your range to in combat with you pretty fast. That being said, they also have no ability to modify their AP at all, which means they're largely stuck with a lot of AP1, not again where you want to be. That being said, they have the raw power to get through that.
Yeah, it's a lot of dice.
It's a lot of dice. It's 7 attacks a dude. And that's ridiculous.
It adds up.
It adds up.
Just adds up.
And if you don't have Armor of Contempt, I promise you, you will die if they charge you. Yeah. The Wraithguard died if they charged them. I mathed it out. It killed 9 and the character. It was ridiculous. It was enough. And if you do have a 2-up in Armor of Contempt, you can be a little rock in a storm, and you can, build a house on that rock. Yep. And that is nice, but it doesn't necessarily win you the game because they also have scads of OC on the objective, and they're hard to kill fast.
Yeah, that's completely all true. I think that they're going to end up being rated quite highly here.
Yes.
And it's another army that ends up being pretty good in singles and teams. It does have the counters. If you can keep it away from them, it will give you points. If you play singles and you dodge those couple scenarios, you can do very well. We've seen Space Wolves do well at quite a number of events. I think of the Space Marine chapter, Space Wolves have put up the best results so far.
That sounds about right. I think the Dark Angel Gladius is stronger in the right hands.
Yep.
Stormlance is pretty brutal if you don't have the right answer for it.
Yep.
And in teams, it is one of the best armies in the game. In teams specifically, it's one of the best armies in the game in singles, but it ascends to a new level in teams because it is just a pairing weapon.
Yes.
You find it the right home, round over.
Yeah, someone just gets eaten. So for Space Wolves, I'm thinking upper end of A tier.
Yeah, I don't think they're quite as well-rounded as Guard is, but I do think that they place higher than the GK, I would say. Higher than the Guard
definitely
is.
higher than the GK. I think is where I'd go there.
Absolutely. Good army. Champions of Russ, underexplored, but quite a solid detachment as well.
Yep.
Really good series of melee buffs in that army.
And you can even do a very solid Space Wolf Gladius. You've got a couple detachments to choose from, even though the typical Wolf jail is Stormlance. There are several good ways to play Space Wolves right now, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And a lot of the ways to run them are pretty fun. I had a blast playing the Stormlance. The army just moves at lightning speed.
It's very fast.
It's very fast, and it is really annoying to kill, and you get to roll a lot of dice.
Yep. I believe you had fun with that.
I did. The Champions of Russ, also very fun. A lot of rules in that army. A lot of ways that you can stack things and make things happen, and a lot of units you can make really good in that army. Really awesome there. And the Gladius is just generally pretty fun.
Generically strong.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Let's move off of the Space Wolves onto the next. And the next one is going to be Tau Empire. All right. So Tau Empire here, much beloved by our resident robot. They've been kind of going up and down, right? Yeah. They've just been going up and down throughout the edition, it feels like. They've got their codex. They've gotten some balancing. And so now we're just at just an established spot for Tau. It no longer feels like they're just changing every month. But they've got some really obscene strengths and some very real problems.
One of the biggest differences between singles and teams, I think, is you're going to have.
Yeah.
Because if they get to pick their board, whew, that is scary.
Yeah.
And if they don't get to pick their board, they are substantially less powerful.
Yep. And I think in singles, when you firmly do not choose the board or the mission or the opponent, I feel like Tau drop off a little bit. Like they're good, but they do kind of have some problems where when the opponent is scoring more points than them and not standing directly in front of the guns, it's very hard to challenge that.
Yes.
Like once the opponent gets to that state, oh no.
Yeah, then
I hope a Breacher Fish can solve all of my problems at once.
I mean, it's telling that probably for at least GW terrain, the thing that the meta has pivoted around in teams is Tau going on table 5. Table 5 is wide open.
Yep.
Tau going on table 5
spooky
is very spooky, but Tau in singles is a lot less powerful than that would lead you to believe.
You never get table 5 on the wrong mission in singles.
No, you just don't.
It's weird. It never happens.
And that is what it takes, unfortunately, to make Tau a terror.
Yeah. And so they're
a tower.
When they're not a tower, they're just like a solid army.
They're just good.
Yeah,
they're just good.
But like, I don't see them as great.
No, I definitely don't think they're going to fall into A tier. No. I think they're going to fall into top of B.
Yeah. I think when you had the theoretically like unnerfed planes for that small period of time when Pariah Nexus came out, I think
Tiger Sharks.
Yeah, I think they were a little bit higher.
Yes,
but that's not real. So I'm thinking B tier for Tau.
Yeah, I think between Blood Angels and Admech is perfectly reasonable. What do you think?
Yeah, I think upper end. I was debating putting them below Admech. Maybe it's above, maybe it's below. They're very, in my opinion, Tau and Admech are in very similar competitive places right now.
I could see that. I don't particularly have a strong opinion there.
I don't have a strong opinion either. Yeah.
I mean, they're for sure, but
yeah,
that's where it ends up.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we got the Thousand Sons.
Whoop whoop
whoop whoop. Big brains casting big magic spells.
Oh, T-Sons. This army theoretically took a nerf, but I don't think anyone told the T-Sun players.
Oh, they did. I've heard some complaining about it, but I don't think it's warranted.
Yeah.
T-Sons are such a hard army to balance from what it looks like.
That is true.
They have so much damage and so many things they can do that it makes it hard to balance what they actually do on the actual tabletop that you actually see them on. Mm-hmm. That being said, I have seen units disappear like dust in the wind in front of a Thousand Sons player.
Yeah, the amount of damage that you can still do with T-Sons and the way that they took their nerfs in Pariah Nexus and just like shrugged is crazy to me.
They've shrugged basically every nerf that they've been thrown.
Correct. Yeah, no, this feels like the last army from Index 10th.
Yes.
And it's just still here.
Yeah, they're definitely feeling them, right? When you build a list with Thousand Sons, it is not fun.
Yeah.
You don't get units. You just don't. But what you get is a certain set of skills.
Yeah.
Skills to make you a nightmare for people like your opponent, people who have
models
units
or wound counts.
Models in units that are on the table, possibly standing on objectives, possibly not. You get a brutal set of army rules and detachment rules is really what you get. And the strats are not bad.
The stratagems are quite good, and they did get another nerf with the indirect flamer change, which is like, real, but they have other indirect weapons to shoot you with, so it still works out pretty okay.
Yeah, what they need to do is they need to hit the damage significantly in the army, and then the points can finally come down.
Doombolt has to be rewritten as a rule.
There's something has to change.
Yeah.
The damage of the army has to drop off, which allows the army to become a real army again.
Yep.
Because right now it is a vehicle for carrying dev wounds and Doombolt and Magnus rerolling hits and wounds to a table near you.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And that is brutal.
And if you poke enough holes in the bucket, it stops carrying water, and it's terrible. Like, T-Sons without Cabal points are as useful as a bucket with a hole in the bottom.
The snap, when they go from an army that has enough Cabal points to do whatever they want to an army that has fewer Cabal points to do what they want, is almost audible.
Yeah.
It
actually,
such a huge difference.
Do you want me to tell you what it sounds like?
What?
Shadows.
Yeah, Shadows Anything that calls a lot of battle shocks also is not ideal.
Yep.
But like the moment they drop below 8 Cabal points, right? They get to Doombolt and that's it, or whatever, is a real problem.
Yeah.
And their army suddenly snaps back to reality. Oop, there goes gravity. Like it's just really not good. But you can't guarantee that you're going to do that to them, because you might end up in a game where you have no agency and your units just got lifted at the speed of sound.
Yeah, it's crazy that like we're like ranking this army is difficult. Not really. We know where it's going. But it's
difficult.
Crazy because the army is like simultaneously the most broken army in the game by far, with a lot more failure points than the next broken army. And so it's like, what? Like what?
Yeah.
Right. Like peak T-Sons is better than peak Sisters and Dark Angels. Peak.
Definitely better than peak Dark Angels. I don't know about peak Sisters, but you can definitely see that.
That's because Sisters hit peak all the time. Because they just choose it.
No, that's it.
But like when the T-Sons get everything going, it's insane. But yeah, sometimes you lose a couple too many units to something you didn't see coming. Sometimes you clock out. Sometimes you fail too many battle shock tests. Sometimes your opponent has indirect that actually rolls a couple 4s.
Yeah, as soon as your super magical awesome spell just fizzles a little bit, it explodes in your face. You don't have an army, you don't have units, and guess what? You lost. Badly too, by the way.
That army do be hazardous.
But you can never guarantee that you're the one who's going to do that to them.
Yeah, no, there are no promises being made there.
If you're playing into T-Sons, you find out turn 2 or 3 whether this is the game where everything goes, where their super spell goes off and your head explodes, or if they mess up one thing. And by the way, it is so easy to mess up or have something fizzle or have something go wrong in T-Sons that it will happen to even the best of the best.
Yeah, no one is immune to the hazardous rolls of T-Sons.
Exactly.
I don't mean the literal roll a 1 on it to see if your Infernal Master's wounded. Just like it's a little hot to play with.
Oops, I had to kill that unit, so I exposed Magnus and I rolled 4 shots and I CP rerolled it into 3 shots and I did not kill it. And now I just lost 15 rubrics and the attached characters and I lost the game very badly.
Yeah. So there are problems, but like, you know what? They good.
Yes.
And so we're putting the thousands in Suns tier.
For sure. Yeah, they are definitely up there. They're in between Sisters and Dark Angels. But that's really a quantum superposition of like bottom of A and top of S.
Plus. Yeah. Like it is. Yeah. It's sometimes,
who knows?
Sometimes T-Sons are A tier, sometimes they're S++.
Yeah. And if you're taking T-Sons to an event, you need to do that calculus a bunch of times. And you can't ever take a game off. Right? If you play with Sisters, I guarantee you there's some games where you're thinking about what your grocery list is going to be as you absolutely shred people.
Yeah.
But you can't ever do that with Thousand Suns, because if you take your eye off the ball for a second, where did it go? It's lodged in my forehead.
Oh no, melee.
And you just don't know what's going to happen. So it also has a higher rate of attrition in tournaments because you always have to be on. And everyone, including the best of the best, are human beings. And if you always have to be on your guard, if you always have to play perfectly, even players who are perfect will mess up. It's how life is. Till robots learn to play 40k. And then you show them T-Sons as an army, and they start to short circuit and smoke.
Yeah, but if
Chatbot
solves T-Sons, it'll win every event. But can't let that happen. All right. That's enough T-Sun talk. Enough. Let's move on.
Stop.
Let's move on to my favorite army. Tyranids in A tier. Tier A nids.
Tier A nids.
Yeah.
Firmly in A tier.
That's where they were before, because I really liked all of the buffs that Tyranids got in Pariah Nexus. And sure enough, the Tyranid win rate from where Pariah Nexus, like where we were going into it, has gotten up significantly. And Tyranids weirdly have had like some decent event showings, but not like some crazy ones, if I'm being honest. They've won a couple events. They haven't won any mass events. They haven't had any huge runs. Funny enough, like I think the biggest event win that Tyranids have was before the Pariah Nexus buffs, was because that was the US Open in Dallas.
Right.
And that's probably the best one they've had this calendar year. I'm still quite high on Tyranids. They still are fundamentally like the same thing as before. They just have a little bit better damage output because you have a little bit of lethal hit sprinkled in from a Tyrant, a little bit of +1 strength on melee, and also the Exocrine. And then you got the buff changed to the Terrain effects, like just a couple little buffs to the output of the army, which were all nice and appreciated. And I love all of those buffs that they made.
Yes.
Tyranids are still fundamentally like hard to play and a little unreliable, which doesn't mean you can't play them. Tyranids have been unreliable for a lot of 10th, and playing around that unreliability is the hard part of playing Tyranids, but it can be done. I'm still quite high on Tyranids, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think they're still pretty good. They have a wide variety of viable builds.
Yep.
I think they fall very firmly into good. Not great, not fine, just they're a good army.
Yep.
Like just good.
Yeah. I think that it's an army that is difficult to play and really rewards you going hard on Tyranids. And I will say, if you're going to pick an army and put 50 reps on it, Tyranids probably aren't the best army in the game to do that with, and therefore people don't do that very often. But I think Tyranids will reward 50 reps. Like the difference between rep 1 with Tyranids and rep 50 with Tyranids is more than it is with Sisters or Dark Angels or a lot of other good armies. So I think that Tyranids win rate is a little bit low for where I believe the power of the army actually is. I think it's just that Tyranids take a lot of work to get to work, and therefore there are less people trying to do it.
Yeah, their
at
power
at the very highest level.
Their power is also expressed in ways that don't come out on first glance. They have a lot of ways to dink your primary score or your secondary score or whatever, and just take some points off the board. Take some points off the board, and you're like, that didn't do anything. And by the end of the game, you're like, wow, I lost by 3 because I lost 10 points on primary because you forced 17 battle shock checks on me.
Yep, and a gargoyle here, and a battle shock there, and a spore mine here, and I actually scored pretty good tactical cards. And oh wow, you're up by 5, and you have bottom of turn. Oh god, I have to rush you. Oh no, I rushed the Tyranid army, and they got the actual activations they wanted.
Yeah, because Tyranids don't like hit soft if they get to combine everything and hit you with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have a great one unit goes out and kills you. But like, if you come to me, I'll find some damage.
I've seen it happen way too many times to doubt it, for sure. And honestly, having a rule that affects the scoreboard is one of the better things you can have. Yeah. The scoreboard determines who wins the game.
Yep. As much as I liked to make fun of Synapse for being a useless rule until it gave me +1 strength and melee, which is merely fine. Shadows is actually a great rule. I quite enjoy Shadows a lot more than I thought I would when I read the darn thing.
Yeah, I remember that at first when the Codex came out, none of us are perfect at evaluating the Codex, you were very low on Shadows. And then you stopped complaining about it when you started ripping 10 points off people's scoreboards and, neutering their go turns with it.
Yeah, and when it went from the index to the codex, I really liked it because that's when you got that point of battle shock synergy.
Yes,
where you could do it across multiple turns with, Neurolictors, and you can get benefits to people being battle shocked besides what being battle shocked does. And suddenly it all clicked into place. Also, I was playing the army a lot more once the codex came out.
Yep,
and then I started to like it a lot more, and I think it ended up as a pretty dang good army. I'm high on Tyranids.
Same here.
Still have them in A tier.
I for sure think so. What do you think? Between Necrons and Aeldari, you thinking? What are you thinking?
I think they're above Necrons.
Above Necrons.
I think above Necrons. I think Tyranids are better than Necrons.
I could absolutely see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So above Necrons there. Yeah. I think that's they're a good army. They're not great in the same way that like Eldar, Thousand Suns, and Dark Angels are great armies. But they are just good.
Yep.
And you can always be in a game with them. And I will tell you, sometimes it can feel really oppressive when you play into them. They just have a lot of monsters that are all hard to kill, but they aren't all that expensive, and they all shoot you some amount. And it's like, where where do I hit this army? Like to turn the damage off and the scoring off and everything. It's just hard.
There's no damage output, but I'm still dying. What do I do?
How is this happening? Like if you want to see the game last week, the game on YouTube last week, you went first. You took a bunch of angles with big monsters, and it was never worth like attacking the big monsters because they were always more durable than their value was. That was really obnoxious, but my units were still dying. That wasn't great.
Yep. Yeah, I'm still quite high on where Tyranids are right now. They still have the same problem as before. They just have a little bit more damage help to go with it.
Yes.
And I think that's fine. But it does mean that Tyranids are a very hard army to play. Because the wheels are always creaking. And they don't always come off, but there's always a little bit of a bump when you're playing Tyranids. It's like you go over and it's like, ooh, is the wheel going to come off? No, we're good. They failed the battle shock test. All right, let's keep playing.
Luckily, it's not like Thousand Suns, where single interactions can cause the wheel to fall off.
Correct.
Usually with Tyranids, there's multiple duplicate interactions that you can fall back on.
Yep.
But if those don't have your back, then they don't have your back.
Yeah.
And sometimes you shoot it like Angron and kill him, and then you're happy.
Yeah.
But you do 6 damage to him, and he walks in and rips another monster apart and says, deal with me again. Yeah, less happy.
Less happy. Very less happy. Yeah, I hate trying to kill Angron.
Yeah.
That never actually works. Or
That dude's
happens.
awesome.
Hate that guy.
Speaking of which.
Yep. All right. Speaking of which, we're on to the next. World Eaters. Jack.
Oh, this is one of my favorite armies in the entire game. I love World Eaters. They are an army after my own heart. They are almost pure melee, although you can put in Forge Fiends, and I think they're really good as a cheap shooting alternative. They are really solid at their one thing, which is fighting you in combat. They're lightning quick. They are tough to kill all at once, and they do hit really hard. Now, they are more complicated to use than it appears because the army lies to you. The army tells you, don't worry, chief, here's what you got to do. Deploy on the line and run at your opponent and don't stop until you hit their backboard edge.
When that works, it's very, very not good.
Sure. If your opponent opens themselves up to it, I would be lying to say I never did that. But as a primary game plan, what you want to do is you want to try to control the center of the board and force your opponent into a dilemma where they have to come to you and give you the charges you're looking for.
Yep.
And the army is actually legitimately very good at that job. Very good.
Yeah.
Because it is, each unit can hit really hard. They can force a lot of oops, you lost the games on you. They can force a bunch of no fallback checks where if you fail them,
I hate when that happens, right?
so like at worst case scenario, oh no, I'm losing to Tau. Anyway, take 4 fallback checks. Oh, you failed 3 of them. Guess what? You got stomped.
Yep.
And like you always have that out, which is sick. They go really fast, and Angron is an absolute beating. He hits incredibly hard. He can go up to 22 inches in charge if you just want to do it. Like it's really just, it's a thing you just can do. Flat 6 advance. Their stratagems, their detachment is really solid. Yep. They have 1 strat that doesn't exist, and they have 5 strats that are insanely good.
You don't need 6 stratagems.
No, it turns out you don't. Most
really
armies don't have 6.
Yeah,
they have 6, but they don't have 6 that they use
You
routinely.
need a couple.
Whereas World Eaters have 5 that are really, really good.
Yep.
6 Exalted 8-bound with -1 damage in combat and a 5-up Feel No Pain is actually brutal to get through in combat. Just absolutely nightmarish to try to kill. And that can help a lot. Like their 5 strats, very good. They have a lot of damage on the charge. They have a decent amount of damage off the charge to compensate for the fact they can't fall back and do anything. So you charging them, it's not like Blood Angels, right? You're not going to get hit by 3 attacks at 4-1-1. You're going to get hit by, 5 attacks at 6-2-2, hitting on 2s. Okay. Like, oh, you got me. Die.
I dislike World Eaters.
I love World Eaters.
I dislike them.
You have your opinions, and that is totally fine with you.
I just think Angron should stay dead.
He does for me. I don't know what to tell you. I do think the Angron comeback mechanic is... The problem is when he doesn't come back, it's not great. And when he does come back, it's too good. And so it's like, we can definitely find a middle ground in here. Yeah. That being said, I think it's fine currently with the way the army is. That the army has some weaknesses to go alongside its strengths. Weakness number 1, it is fairly expensive. So it is, you don't have a ton of units.
Yep.
And if combats go poorly for you, it's not like Tau. If they shoot you and don't kill you, you don't immediately shoot them back, right?
Yeah.
Right? If I charge you and I roll bad and I roll really bad and I don't kill you, you then get a free activation into me and then it goes into your turn.
Yeah, as long as I get to fall back.
As long as you get to fall
As long as
back.
I get to fall back.
But a lot of times what'll happen is like I send a 3-man in, just completely whiff, which happens, like, or they pass a ton of saves or something. And then they get to just clock me in the face. And then they now get to use that unit on their turn to walk up and kill a second unit.
I love that when that happens.
No, it's bad.
Theoretically,
it's bad.
The first time I get charged by World Eaters and live, I will love that.
Yeah, you don't tend to play armies that do that other than Dark Angels, which, by the way, is one of the matchups that is absolutely atrocious, is playing into the Gladius.
Yeah.
The Gladius is brutal. They have a one-click, one-stop shop for solution for Angron, which is rough. They have the Eradicators. -1 damage on guys with a 2-up save and Armor of Contempt. Miserable. Reactive moves, miserable. So that matchup, really bad. The rest of them, I mean, Sisters is also bad. So like World Eaters suffers from having some bad matchups at the top end. And the T-Sons matchup is straight up, let's just find out what happens. I don't know. You don't know.
If you get hit by the T-Sons, I know what happens after that.
Yes. But also, if the World Eaters hit the T-Sons, I know what happens after that.
That would be bad, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of hampered. The army is kind of hampered by having not the best matchups currently into the very top of the field. Sisters is bad. Dark Angels is bad. T-Sons is someone's getting 20-0'd. And it's more likely you than them, but it can still happen.
Yeah.
And that holds it back. It also doesn't have a ton of units, so if things start going poorly, you have very limited resources to fall back on, which is not ideal. That being said, the army does what it does really, really well.
Yeah.
And if you play it smart, it can be, you can run into the scenario where people play into a mediocre World Eaters player and assume they know the matchup. That is death.
Yeah, making mistakes against World Eaters is very, very bad for your health. You cannot be doing that. I've seen it too many times.
There are ways around transports. There's ways around fight first, Overwatch. All of the mechanics where people throw a fight first into their army and go, hey, now I beat World Eaters. I have a fight first. And then they walk up to you and I go, all right, here's 10 cultists lining your unit and here's 6 dudes touching one guy. And then your unit gets blasted and you have no fallbacks, right? No, maybe no fallbacks like actually, but you have no fallback plan. If you know how to play into World Eaters and you know how to play into good World Eater players, then that's one thing. But the worst thing you can possibly do is play a practice game into a mediocre World Eaters player and go, we're good here. Because you'll show up against a good one, and there are some, and you will get annihilated.
Yeah, the army snowballs super hard. So overall, we're relatively high on World Eaters, I think, right?
For sure. They definitely land in A tier somewhere.
Okay.
The question is,
the world
where?
A tiers.
The world A tiers.
A tiers.
A tiers. I would probably say that they land somewhere around Grey Knights.
Yeah, I would put them like a notch ahead of the Grey Knights personally.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah.
Now they are a little inconsistent in teams, which can be an issue. And they're a little inconsistent in singles, which can be a different issue. But the power is there.
Yeah. And when they work, which is usually when they're piloted by a great player, that's when the power really comes out.
Yes.
Because you do not get representative World Eater play from everyone, unfortunately. There's a lot of mistakes being offered up to you as a World Eater player, which is, play like play. If you read the first 25 pages of a codex and it tells you how to play an army, sometimes it's lying to you.
Yeah, the army straight up lies to your face. It tells you, just get in there, chief.
Yeah.
Start charging them.
That's what Corn wants from you, but that's not what World Eaters want from you.
That won't get you the most skulls possible. That'll only get you some skulls. And that's not what we want.
Like yours.
So, yeah, often.
Often.
All right.
Well, we've got one army left before we can delve into the wealth of super chats we've gotten here. So let's hit this last army in the game. Imperial Agents.
Yes, it's a real army now.
It's a real army.
It's a real boy.
Yeah, it was totally a real army before, and that's why this is their first time ranking it. It didn't have a previously ranked because it wasn't previously ranked.
It wasn't an army.
We've got
but
a
it
codex
wasn't.
now.
It does. It has detachments.
I like the detachments. As an ally, not that much change, but actually getting detachments means that Imperial Agents have rules. It's kind of weird. It's kind of fresh. Whole new army that is going to impact the scene impactfully.
Probably, yeah.
I don't even think this has a win rate yet. I don't know.
I don't
even know. I have no concept. I don't think it's gone to any events yet. It just came out on Saturday, right?
They did a really good thing, which is to separate the points for the army playing itself and the army being an ally.
I am glad that they did that.
Yes.
I would like them to do that with demons.
They should do that with demons for sure.
Like that.
Yeah. And then remove the battle line
remove
rule.
the battle line rule.
Remove the battle line rule at that point.
That's the dream.
There are some things that are useful as allies. Subductors are insane for 85 points.
Great allies, yeah.
Some of the assassins are good. The Vindicare, I don't know why they priced him like he's the best one. He's the worst one, but he is sure 150 and you won't take him. But the Calidus is still good. The Calexis is pretty good now with the 3-inch deep strike. And the Eversur is a beast.
Yeah.
He went way up in points, but he does
does more.
He does slam. Nice. But yeah, that's about it. It lost its ability, really, to hand you the cheapest unit in the game.
Yeah, no, that's not really a thing it does anymore.
It's not really a thing it does anymore. Now, scouts are really your lowest thing in Space Marines.
Yeah,
so you better go ahead and take those. I mean, you can take agents, 6 agents that are, I think, now 1 wound apiece for 60 points, and you're just not going to do that.
Or you could take an Inquisitor with no friends for cheaper.
Sure.
5, but no one cares about that.
But the point is now they give you, if you want to make your backfield holding unit like pretty damn solid, you take Subductors, and if you want lone ops, you take the Assassins, and if you are Admech or Custodes, you take, the best unit in your book, Draxus, and that's grand.
Yeah.
As a standalone army, you've played it a couple times. How do you feel?
Yeah, I quite like agents when you can get them working. They very much do fall into the trouble of it is not a complete army.
No.
So what they do what it says on the tin better than it looks, which is when you take specifically the Imperialist Fleet Detachment, you take a bucket of random kill team boxes, and then you give them funky characters and enhancement and rules. And it's like, oh, this is going to be another one of those, like, here are 11 different weapons on 12 different models. This will add up to kill 2 Space Marines in 12 inches. And that's wrong, because it kills like 10. But, yep, you do have the problem where none of that works against things that are too tall. You get stat checked harder than most armies in the game. Almost any, because there is not a lot of good anti-tank, like, at all in this codex. You get a twin-linked multi-melt on the Immolator that doesn't have Miracle Dice. That's cool.
It's not.
You don't
not cool, actually.
You don't have a battle tank equivalent.
No. You don't have anything that just outputs damage.
No, you have to take Canis Rex to get a big activation. Other than that, you have a couple melee things that do better than they look, like the Deathwatch Veterans and the Grey Knight Terminators, but those are still not insane.
Yeah, having one of your best damage output units be Grey Knight Terminators, but with no rules, is definitely...
Giving them Lance is dope.
That is cool.
But you don't get Armor Contempt or Mists.
And I would rather have AOC and Mists.
Yeah, no, I get it.
No, yeah, True Silver Armor does bop, for sure.
Yeah, so I think agents are... I think it's really cool. I think you can also do cool things in teams where you just have a lot of cheap units and you get to avoid... Like, I could not play... I think, into Chaos Knights with Imperial Agents. I just can't do it.
Yeah, you put together your super Voltron mega attack and you kill one, and then they just go...
Yeah, and then everything's dead.
Everything dies.
That'd be terrible. I don't want that. So you can do cool things with the army. It is better than it looks. I think in singles play, you've got a little bit of a make sure, like, don't play the wrong thing problem, but you have such, like, obnoxious aspects of the army, such as cop jail or jail. And this is where
the cops put you in jail.
Yeah, exactly. It's where the cops put you in jail, where you infiltrate 33 subductors for, like, free. Just like, so yeah, I bought a 10-point enhancement, so now I'm infiltrating 33 of the cops. Oh man, I went first. Boop. You don't get to move. Lone ops on every objective, you can't move. Oh. Yeah, like what are you going to do about that? Some people will do things. Some people won't.
Also, 33 subductors for 255 points.
Yeah. It's called 265 after I buy them infiltrate.
Wildly too cheap.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Because they're 11 dudes with a 3-up armor save, 10 of which have a shield, one of which is a dog.
Hey, you know what happens if you charge 5 Deathwing Knights into 11 Subductors on objective? The agents score a 5 on primary.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Now that is how that works.
Why? Nobody knows. I don't know, man.
Also, you can't kill them quickly with things that you think would kill toughness 3 1 wound bodies quickly because they have a 3-up armor saving cover.
Yeah. And then you sneak a couple Forp Invulns in there, and then you stratagem one guy, one unit to have a Forp Invuln. Also, they move now. And then they heal. It's so annoying. But if you can just say, okay, this has been adorable, and you have way more points in the first 3 battle rounds than I expected. But I'm done. Eat my entire army. That can work.
Yeah, if you trick your opponent into playing conservatively and trying to play a normal game of Warhammer with you, the army's not bad.
Yeah.
If your opponent looks at your data sheets and says you're entirely 5-0-1 over there and just takes their army and slings it into you at max speed with 0 respect,
most armies will pass that.
Most armies will pass that check.
Some can't. But the agent's damage just drops off into certain profiles. Again, I don't think I could beat like Knights, Chaos Knights, a Sagittar heavy Votann list. If you just take a lot of holes or a lot of high armor saves, I think you just can't crack that one in time with agents to really do anything.
It's the issue that Eldar had back in 9th edition, where they can put together the damage to kill a vehicle, but they can put together the damage to kill a vehicle, and it requires you assembling a mega combo.
Yep.
And that is bad because your opponent's never just going to have one vehicle that threatens you. They're going to have like 6. Yeah. And if you put together a mega combo and delete a vehicle, you just get hit back.
Yeah.
And then you can't assemble it again.
So agents are going in C tier.
Yeah, no, they're in C tier for sure.
They're not D tier.
No, and they're not the worst army in the game either.
Yeah, they could be. It's the wealth of matchups that they like can't do is problematic. But then also like it is a lot of just crazy little guys.
Just little dudes.
Just like it's not that many points for what is essentially a battle sister with a storm shield. That is cheaper than a battle sister. And sometimes it's like that's actually very hard to deal with.
I've seen multiple armies lower than this army struggle substantially to deal with it. Because it's a lot of dudes that are a little too tough and do a little too much damage, and you can assemble a wombo combo to delete real units as long as they're not, like a rhino, because that's not worth it. But if it is like you assemble a wombo combo and delete 10 aberrants, guess what? That just sucks for the GSC guy.
Yeah.
50% of the time.
33?
33 if it happens
66%?
on turn 3. Yeah. 66% of the time it sucks every time.
So I'm inclined to put them towards the bottom end of C tier.
For sure. What are we placing them above?
I'm not even sure if they are above Drukhari. It's funny to do it, but like they do just like hard lose to the things that are too tough. Like I cannot foresee agents beating like Tyranids, Sisters, like, and I know we're comparing them to like some of the good stuff, but also like Knights, Chaos Knights, or just like anyone who decided to spam tanks or monsters.
Here's the real question: do you remotely foresee Drukhari beating those matchups either?
Even though I don't understand it, they actually have done it, and we don't have any agents data. I mean, we could put agents ahead of Drukhari, and it would be big funny. But also, like, I think respectfully, agents probably are the least complete army in the game.
I don't have a strong opinion about them higher or lower than Drukhari or whatever. It doesn't speak very highly of either, to be clear.
No. I think it's below. I think agents, as funny as they are, and as much as they can win games and look good in those games, I think it would be extremely difficult to run the 5-game gauntlet and not hit one of the problems.
That sounds fair. Now, I do think that they actually have positive matchups, quite positive in some cases, into Drukhari and GSC.
I would be happy to play agents into either of those armies.
I do not want that smoke.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it.
I mean, we probably will end up playing that, but I don't think I'm going, if I play the GSC into them, I don't think I'm going in as a favorite because just some of those data sheets are really annoying. Like the problem is, right, their problem is that they can't assemble a lot of damage, but into Drukhari and into GSC, you don't need to.
Yep.
And then it's fine.
Yeah. And they're also not super dynamic once the game gets going. They just have a bunch of weird tricks, not reliable tricks.
Yes.
Like, oh, I kill dudes on objective way more than an idiot from a kill team box should. Fair enough. But that's not the end all be all.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay, well, I mean, nobody's really that surprised, I think, by Imperial Agents being the worst army in the game.
Do we want to look through this a little bit to see if we want to refine any of the things here?
Sure. I'm good with S tier personally.
Agreed. I think A tier is the one that I want to wiggle a little bit.
What are you thinking?
I think we've got... I think I might switch like CSM and Space Wolves, potentially.
You think Space Wolves are the top of A?
I think they're very good.
I mean, we have them in very good tier right now.
They're in very good tier. I think we have CSM like mildly too high. I think CSM are top half of A tier. I don't think they're top of A tier.
I mean, I'm happy moving them down a little bit. It does get a little reductive when you drill down too deep into it. And like, where does one army go versus another?
I think that is something I'm fine with.
I can do with that. Space Wolves are really good.
The rest
a little inconsistent matchups.
The rest of A tier I'm okay with.
Yeah, looks good to me. B tier... I mean, I'm generally fine with.
I want to see vanilla Space Marines ahead of Orks, personally.
I can deal with that. I mean, I'm not... Bottom of B tier for Orks and top of C tier are functionally the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've already had that one. Other than that, I think I'm fine with B. Then C tier... Yeah.
Looks
that's
good.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm okay.
That's fine.
All right.
All
Cool.
right.
Not that many changes.
We'll ship it.
Take the screenshots now, Reddit. Okay. And now... we have some super chats. So
now we do.
Thank you so much to everyone who gave super chats during the stream. We very much appreciate you giving us support. It is wonderful and appreciated, and it helps the channel grow. Let's hit them. So first up, we have a Jeremiah PV who has just joined the War in Bronze. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Next is Stephen Horowitz, who is proud to have ruined the stream.
Horrifying. I can't believe that. Yeah,
this morning.
Too many super chats, specifically from Stephen Horowitz, did this. I will find you.
Stephen. Never cross my path.
That's right. Or do.
Yeah, those are the options.
Come say hi at an event or something. You know, it's fine.
All right. Next up is Alistair McRae. Thank you so much for the super chat. Have you ever thought of doing a bit on really bad matchups and what to do to mitigate the problem? For example, how bad Grey Knights are into demons. We've done that on occasion in the War Room, but it's been a while, so maybe that's something we could revisit a little more in the future. We did a battle report in 9th where I played Imperial Knights into Votann. And we talked about how to best polish that matchup.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. So, yeah, the main issue is it doesn't lead to very... It leads to an informative game about that one specific question.
Yep.
But it doesn't lead to a broadly informative game. And so we tend to steer clear of them. But it is an interesting thing to bring up, and we'll consider it.
Right on. All right, next up we have Christian L, who's been a member for 28 months, saying that White Scars using Legends rules are the best faction. I would have to reread the Legends rules. Read the Legends rules to know what makes White Scars the best with that. I would assume that Khan on bike and Corsaro Khan, or maybe there's like a veteran bike squad with Storm Shields and Thunderhammers that used to exist.
Maybe.
And they're all
would
like
never
index
know.
free or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but good.
Yeah.
Then Chris Todd with a super chat. Here you go, Quentin. Get yourself a Publix chicken tender sub on me. See you at Greasebowl.
That is exactly what he will spend that on.
Thank you so much, Chris Todd. We will buy Quentin a chicken tender sub so that he can eat today. Hopefully he saves it because that's only lunch.
That's all he's getting. Like we can buy it for him, but then he's not seeing that super chat money. That's how that works.
Yeah.
I didn't write the rules, Quentin. I'm sorry.
He signed it.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Grokvar, who sounds to me like an Orc chieftain, personally.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Grokvar. Agree about Adamec. Took them to my second ever tournament a few months ago. Actually won a few matchups, finishing 2-4. Much improved. Yeah, I think Adamec as a faction has improved a good amount, and I'm very happy to see that. Clearly, Grokvar was too, because they gifted 5 Art of War memberships to the channel.
Thank you.
Thank you so
very much.
All right.
We got Real Ones 40k. Real Ones, no. And Real Ones are in the War Room Gold. Thank you so much. Appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
We got Ryan G with a $10 super chat saying, with no new 40k releases on the horizon till January, are you guys worried that we might run into a situation where a bunch of codexes release literal months before 11th?
Well, all codexes are literal months before. Just hopefully more than 2 this time.
Okay.
I don't think we're at that point yet. If theoretically GW does like the the cycle, we would get 11th edition 40k in 2026 in the summer.
I cannot emphasize enough.
3 years.
We do not know this.
We
are
that.
speculating based on the fact that we've been doing this for a collective like 30 years between the two of us.
About there, yeah.
About there. I've been doing it for like 13, and you've been doing it for like 16,
more,
18.
So it was summer of 23 when we got 10th.
Yes.
So if we theoretically were to do a 3-year edition, which is, I believe, how long 9th was. So I'll just use that as a baseline. That would mean we are not halfway through the edition yet. And I believe we have more than half of the codexes. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a little bit closer to 8th edition, where everyone has a codex with like a reasonable amount of edition left. And then you get some little campaign-y updates and some balance work at the end of now 10th edition. And then those codexes can be used in 11th edition so that even when you got an end of 8th edition codex, you know what? You still used the same book in early 9th. It was okay.
That'd be pretty neat.
I would like that if I were choosing.
Yes, but we're not.
But we're not.
And we don't know.
So am I worried? Perpetually. However,
about that or just in general?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Just in general.
Right.
Hopefully
cool,
that
cool.
doesn't manifest though.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Miles has a super chat for Titan. Thanks for the content, John and Jack. Thank you for the support.
Thank you. It was good seeing you at Gateway a couple weeks ago.
Very nice.
So,
all right. Next, we have Pro Antagonist. What was included in your Eldar list? 10 Wraithguard with Seer, Kane, full troops with Vizark and Yvrain. Also, what was your game plan? Ever use fixed?
So, in reverse order, never used fixed. Tactical now is just significantly better, even if you are gaining a free second command point off the of the Autarch Wayleaper. Yeah, words are sometimes hard. So, if I can remember the list off the top of my head, it was Autarch Wayleaper with Phoenix Gem, Death Jester with Fate's Messenger, Farseer on foot, Farseer on bike, the Avatar. Then it was the Vizark and Yvrain and a Spirit Seer with Weeping Stones. Then we went down to the troops, and we've got 10 Guardian Defenders with a Bright Lance platform. Then we had 10 Wraithguard, 12 troops, the full 12. Then we had 4 units after that. I think it was Rangers, Scorpions, Hawks, and bikes with cannons, like three-man bikes.
I love that you closed your eyes for the first half.
I had to. I needed to consult.
By any chance, did you make any content in the Worm about that?
I believe we made some videos about it. I haven't gotten the chance to put it on the table in stream yet. Quentin has put variations of it on stream.
Okay.
I do want to play a game with it quite badly. I have been requesting to, but unfortunately,
perhaps we'll get it up
there's
soon.
only so many Eldar games we want to put on stream before we do something else. There is one spot left in the Eldar group coaching that starts today that for Quentin, who is the Eldar master, if you want to learn how to do any of that.
All right. Next up is Bonsai Kitty Gaming, who has been a member for 9 months. Thank you. Love the channel. Went to gold level to learn more from the Demon Master Nick. How would you start a Chaos Demon army in Nexus with Great Unclean One and Rodigus? And do you think there is any room for Mono God or just kneecapping yourself? Well, once you start with Great Unclean One and Rodigus, you actually have a lot of points left, so you can put something in like another Great Unclean One.
Or 3 Keepers of Secrets. Up to you.
Secrets. I do think that it's not worth going Mono God, but if you're gonna go Mono God, I do believe Nurgle is the best one to go Mono of.
Nurgle's good, Slaanesh is good, but there's like no reason to do that specifically.
I would not do Mono Slaanesh, even though I like a lot of Slaanesh things more than I used to.
Yeah, I think it's better than Mono Khorne and Mono
Tzeentch. Yeah.
Tzeentch, thank you.
But I think that you generally do not want to go Mono God, at least until we see a Demon's Codex that gives you a Nurgle detachment rule.
There's just no reason to, is the issue.
There's just no reason to. And unfortunately, it is just better to take Celesk or Fate Weaver or Keepers or Scarbrand or something.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, I would probably just take a lot of monsters. So Guo, Rodigus, Keepers of some amount, Fate Weaver, maybe a Shoot Bird, more Guos.
It's always room for a Shoot Bird.
Plague Bearers for your home objective, and then maybe some Nurglings. That's
good stuff. All right, next up is from the real Drukhari. Question for Jack. On a scale of World Eaters to Blood Angels, how excited are you to see Blood Angels dominate the meta?
So that's on the scale of 10 to 10, which is definitely... Then it's 10. I'm very excited for Blood Angels. I just feel like we haven't gotten the Codex yet.
We have,
but we don't have real points. And without real points, I can't write lists.
Yep.
And without writing lists, I can't get excited for them.
I can get excited.
I'm excited, but it's like I'm waiting. I'm a coiled spring waiting to release.
I need models to paint to get excited, and we also don't have those. Though.
We also do not have those because I do want to buy myself 18 of those suckers when they come out.
Why not, right?
That is going to be my very, at this point, delayed birthday present to myself.
There you go. All right. Next question is from Penguinius. Hey, Jack and John, could you tell us more about the Eldar brick list or what events it did well at? I'm assuming that's the exact same list that you just recited.
Yes.
You took it to some events, right?
Yes. So I took a variation of it before Quentin gave me the final piece of the puzzle that I needed in the form of the Wraith Guard to a tournament, a GT, a local GT here, and I got first. Quentin got second. But we were both undefeated, so it was just purely random tiebreakers that determined that.
Sure.
Then I took it to, Quentin and I both took it to the Onslaught GT, and we went undefeated outside of playing each other, in which Quentin got that one. And then I took it to the Gateway Open team event, where I got second place on the Battle Master track. Yeah. So I think I dropped a combined 4 teams points.
Teams event as well?
Our team did, in fact, win that. Midwest Monstars did very well. And I dropped a combined 4 points from all my games.
So if you look up, what was it? It was Gateway
Open
or
Onslaught GT or TLM at Leighton, which was the GT there. TLM X Leighton.
And you can see the history of the list of all in there.
Yep. Very cool. I believe Quentin and I recorded some videos for the War Room.
Ooh.
If you want to check that out, or at least check out the theory behind the list.
Very cool.
You can see that. Then Quentin also played some games in the War Room with it.
There we go. All right. Dallas has become a member of the War Room Bronze. Thank you very much, Dallas. And then Wog Tactics has been a member for 1 month of the War Room Bronze. Welcome to the channel, Wog Tactics. And Wog Tactics has some opinions on Orks. John was right about Orks. No way that's B tier with respect. I appreciate the kill rig love, which is justified, but there's a lack of AP, damage 3, and some anti-tank. Yeah, you've got some problems, but hey, kill rigs.
Kill rigs. We ranked them, and there's some units in there. Knobs hit really hard. The Beast Boss hits really hard. We ranked them bottom of B. They could be top of C without actually changing the list at all.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the vagaries of writing a tier list. I think they still have some juice to them, but obviously it puts them significantly in the bottom half of armies, no matter what. And I hope that they can at least fix WA so it doesn't get just absolutely brutal if you go second.
Yeah. All right. And then next up, we have Jonathan Haynes with a super chat. Thank you so much. Hi, Jack and John. Hi, Jonathan Haynes. Appreciate you being here.
Appreciate being here. Appreciate seeing you all the time.
Absolutely.
Just absolutely all the time.
Omri K has been is a member of War and Bronze. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Matt has been a member for 44 months, which is, I think, as long as we've had this YouTube channel existing. If you could change one rule in the game, what would you change?
That is tough.
That's tricky.
That is very tricky. One rule.
I think
I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is the forced basing on charge moves.
I do hate that.
I hate that so much. I want 9th edition combat rules back significantly. But I'm sure I have something I hate more. It's just not coming to mind because I try not to think about it, you know. Yeah. But that would probably be the one for me.
Mine was more of a balance thing than like a personal frustration thing, and that is, I think that you should never, if you have crit 5s, you should not be able to have both sustained and lethal at the same time. Crit 5s, sus and lethal same time is too much.
Maybe, I don't know. It could be fun. Like it's points, right?
But I'd rather they not point to the unit like it has those buffs, because then it sucks when it doesn't have those buffs.
Yeah, that feels like sure, that could be fine.
I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I like both. Oh. Then we have Gary with a $10 super chat. What would you guys consider to be a bad matchup for Storm Lance Wolves? I personally think that really good melee armies who have just like some of the right profiles, like I think potentially World Eaters or Dark Angels could do quite well into Stormlance Wolves.
So they are -1 to hit and wound in shooting, but not in combat. So if 6 Exalted 8-bound hit a Stormlance unit, that unit disappears. Just gone. All of it, like top to bottom. I think a lot of things that have a 2-up save with Armor of Contempt are a real issue. So for example, Deathwing Knights or Brotherhood Terminators or Paladins are a real problem.
Yep.
But if you don't fall into those two camps, a lot of damage out of melee, or 2-up save with Armor Contempt, you can have a real bad time. The other thing that I think can cause a problem, although this is a volatile problem in that it can blow up in your face, is if you have a lot of guns and you go first. The army doesn't hide.
Yeah.
And yes, it can be -1 to hit and wound and shooting, but I have...
1 unit.
At Gateway, we paired our Tau, who we made the Towiest Tau because we handed them the most guns possible. We paired it intentionally into Stormlance, and our guy went first and killed 2 entire bricks of Thunderwolf Cav on turn 1.
That's too many.
The game did not go uphill from there for Stormlance.
That's too many.
Yeah.
Can't be losing that turn 1.
Yep.
That's not good.
I think Stormlance can get through Bulgrin, but it does take time.
Yeah.
It's like you can punch your way through wet clay. It just your fists start sinking in. It's just like, oh, this is taking forever. But yeah, I would say anything that can, in combat, quickly put them to their invulnerate damage too is going to be an issue.
I'd agree with that. All right. Then next we have, Olivier with another super chat. What would a bad matchup be for Tau Ret Cadre? I'm a little less familiar with what the best Tau Ret Cadre lists are doing right now. I know that they have actually had a bit of a resurgence where I think that some Ret Cadre actually finished quite well at events in the Pacific Northwest, such as the US Tacoma Open. But I'm not entirely positive what the bad matchups would be, which I feel bad for.
For Richard here, he could answer.
If we had Richard,
pretty good. I'm sure if he is watching the video, he will post in the chat under the Art of War 40k username, but probably isn't.
Yeah. Olivier, hit us up tomorrow during the YouTube game. Richard will be playing that YouTube game, so I apologize. I don't want to make up an answer here, but if I were to answer, it'd be making up an answer.
Yeah,
and I don't want to lie.
I think Stormlance is a little rough because it's a lot of little instances of damage. They tend to be relatively close, and Fire and Fate isn't going to help get away.
That makes logical sense.
Yeah, that's I don't know, but definitely tomorrow during the YouTube game would be the time to ask that question.
Absolutely.
Who's going to be on the PC for that? They can try and remember that Olivia already asked.
I'll remind them.
You'll remind them.
Yep.
All right.
All right. And then we have Trent Raber with another super chat. What are your thoughts on the rumors that demons as an army are going away in 40k? As someone who hates playing into Greater Demon Soup, I'm okay with it, but how valid do you think the rumors are? I'm not going to lie to you. I hadn't heard that rumor yet.
I had not heard that either.
So I don't have a reason to believe it. I mean, that would not make sense to me. Demons have been in an army for a while.
I would be deeply
they have
surprised.
A very large plastic line. I would be surprised. I feel like the armies that are going away are the ones that have like 2 plastic kits and not a lot of identity.
Yeah. Also, their greater demons look really good. They put a lot of work in to make sure those plastic kits look good.
Like we just got a Bellicor. I don't know. That doesn't seem like a particularly likely rumor to me.
I'd be surprised. I'd be shocked. I'd be gobsmacked.
Gobsmacked? All right. Well, when it happens, we'll take a picture of Jack's gobsmacked face. I don't know. It's probably not going to happen.
No, it would not. Then I would be willing to place a bet that it would not happen. But are you willing to take the other side of that bet?
No.
Did not think so.
All right. And then we've got Gary with the super chat. I was the Space Wolf player at Gateway. I can confirm that Mech Tau on layout picked by Tau going second is bad news. Yeah. I don't know who does want to go second against Tau when they pick the terrain. It's not any army that I own.
No, it certainly isn't one whose footprint is the size of a very large charcuterie board and cannot hide.
Yeah, that's true.
Gary was doing really, really well at the event. We took him very seriously, and we intentionally were like, nope, this is what we want to do.
This is where it ends?
This is where it ends.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and we told Dilly, we're like, listen, buddy, how do you feel about going first? He's like, I feel good about going first. We're like, perfect. Get in there, Chief.
That's what you need. And then I think our final super chat here from Olaf. John, how would you take a Gladius list with Calgar? I would basically make the list around the Calgar and Fire Discipline Eradicator brick. I would then lean into what I consider to be the normal good Gladius things, such as like when you don't have your own chapter melee unit, Assault Intercessors with Captains, and quite a few Gladiators, possibly even a Land Raider Redeemer. Taking the good Space Marine units, which is Eradicators, some combat, Calgar, tanks, and playing Warhammer with it generally works pretty well. I've actually played a couple games with Ultramarine Gladius on the channel into things such as the new Tau Codex and the new Chaos Space Marine Codex. And I think we actually do have one more super chat from the stream we will not be acknowledging this morning when the Nurglings were able to steal our audio for a little bit. And what is that?
Unfortunately, it appears that the chat was lost to the vestiges of time, so we will have to go back. You wrote it down? Fantastic.
I did write down the name so that I could go back, but the question is, how do we feel about 3 bricks of 20 warriors in Hypercrypt with an Overlord and a Technomancer in each?
Okay, so the question is, how do we feel about 3 bricks of warriors with a Lord and Technomancer in Hypercrypt? That do be many dudes. I very much enjoy having like warrior bricks and the monolith because it's very hard to one activate, like kill the warrior bricks. And if your opponent is getting to that point, you just like use the Lord, -1 CP, pull to the monolith. Just kidding, the monolith is next to the reanimator. Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah, I think that the value and utility of the 20-mans drops off significantly after the first one.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen.
I could do 2 so that you're cycling them, but I don't think I could do 3.
No, 3 is a little too much. You need some teeth behind that army.
Yeah, you very much do need some damage there. So 1 or 2 feels like the right number for warrior bricks. I do believe that brick is good in Hypercrypt. I don't know about 3.
Yep.
And then, yeah.
I would probably take 1 or 2 and then some shooting, honestly, legitimately.
I do like taking guns.
And Richard was good enough to hop in the chat and answer the question about retribution or retaliation cadre.
Oh, perfect.
Yes. So thank you so much, Richard, for that. You are definitely the expert on that one.
There we go. All right, that, I believe, wraps us up for this tier list. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed putting that screenshot into your local chat and then reading 100 messages afterwards.
Yes. But I firmly anticipate getting some hate mail for this one, but it is what it is. You always get it.
That's how Quentin pays rent.
That is.
So that's okay. If you like this video, please like it. If you didn't like it, the least you could do is leave us a comment and tell us why. We appreciate that. Likes, comments, sharing with your friends, all these things really help us with the whole YouTube algorithm, growing the channel, and making more videos thing, which, we want to do for you. So please subscribe to the channel to get notified when we go live with even more content. You know what? Today's only Tuesday. I'm willing to bet we're going to go live with some more content on this channel tomorrow. Maybe even Thursday.
That sounds about right.
I'll be both because we do it every week.
That's right. I mean, if one were a betting man, one could look at last week and see that we did a live YouTube game on every Wednesday that you can tune in for at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
The event's already live. You can go click on it now.
Okay, well, you're just kind of scooping me here, John.
I'll do it again.
I know. And then also we have a show where we broadly try to stay on topic and fail about a particular topic and answer chats and whatnot on Thursdays. And, if you like this content, you will almost certainly like that one too. So go ahead and join us on that.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will catch all of you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.